Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 410. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Was Sean thinking of me to be one of the Lunchables? So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, or the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, Jim and I talk about some of the recent comic releases, including books like we're going to actually talk about the crossover going on in Green Lantern right now, the Godhead crossover, up to Red Lantern's issue number 35. We also talk about Gotham Academy number 1, Catwoman number 35, and Batgirl number 35. In the first of a 2-episode segment, taking a look at some of the creative changes at DC and some of the new books that have been released. We also have some wonderful listener voicemail, so thank you for everyone that called in. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the DCinfinite.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. We're actually at the end of the month at DCBService.com. Jim and I get very excited for this time of the month. But if you haven't ordered it yet, available in this month's order was Secret 6 number 1. $2.99 regularly, 50% off, only $1.49. I know I mentioned it on a previous episode before, but I am so geeking out, excited, waiting for Gail Simone and Dale Eaglesham to blow my mind that I want to shout out this book once again. Remember that DCBService.com is a digital partner. Whether you do Comixology or My Digital Comics, remember to link your accounts to your DCB Service accounts to earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB Service order. Please click on the links on our show website and make sure to check them out. Over at InStockTrades.com, they moved recently, and because of their move, they're doing these amazing sales. They usually do 5 regular books and 1 kid's book. Now they do 10 regular books and 2 kids' books at these 50% off discounts. Some of the examples on the DC side are things like the All-Star Western Trade Paperback Volume 5, Man Out of Time, $16.99 regularly, 50% off, only $8.49. Harley Quinn, hardcover Volume 1, Hot in the City. That's a $24.99 hardcover, 50% off, only $12.49. The Annotated Sandman, hardcover Volume 3. $49.99 regularly, 50% off, only $24.99. You can see how quickly you can get up to $50. When you get to that $50 mark, you get free shipping. So you've saved 50% off on these titles, and you get free shipping. Not to mention that that InStockTrades.com, they're linked with DCBService.com, but InStockTrades.com also has, like the Batman hardcover Volume 5, 0 Year Dark City. That's 42% off, only $14.49. They have these amazing deals throughout their site. So keep checking out. They update their, I think it's weekly they update their deals. So that's in DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com, our show sponsors. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotlines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
That's some tasty whatnot. Let's talk some comics.
Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
Jim, to start off this episode, I want to talk about the Green Lantern Godhead crossover, and we're going to talk about it casually up to issue 35 of Red Lanterns. So for anybody, that's Act 1, Part 5 of the Godhead storyline. I wanted to talk about this just because it's a big Green Lantern event. It also introduces, even though we've had a presence from like the High Father and Orion in Wonder Woman and Darkseid, and characters like Mr. Miracle and stuff like that, and the Earth 2 book, this is the first time that they've really, as a group, been introduced as the new gods, and we start expanding the characters of the new gods that have been featured in the DC universe. So it's really not just piecemealed versions of the characters anymore. They're all coming together as one core group. And when I say piecemeal, it's not to diminish them. It was interesting, their introduction. I actually like that when we're getting the new gods now and their motivation in this Godhead storyline, it's coming from the fact that we as readers, we're 35 issues into books like Red Lanterns and stuff like that. We've seen Darkseid in the New 52 since the beginning. He was the first big villain in the Justice League book. So we understand him as a threat. We understand him as a threat not only to our Earth, but as a huge threat to Earth 2. A threat to Earth 2 that took out the Superman and Batman over there. And Wonder Woman. Actually, the whole trinity over there. So it's a character that's been established as a huge threat. So the motivation here for the Highfather is the Darkseid's got the anti-life equation, right? That's his whole MO. With the Highfather, he's searching for the life equation, and that leads him to go to the energy, the life energy that the Green Lanterns have been the Lanterns, I should say, in general, have been tapping into. His original plan was to get one of each ring, and figuring that he would be able to use that to put together the whole life equation. He realizes, though, it's not enough to have one from each spectrum. He actually needs the one that's all the spectrum, which would be the one that Kyle has. Very interesting storyline so far. I've been really digging the introduction of the New Gods, the modernization of them, because what they've done here that I think is critical. I read the omnibuses, and that was really my full exposure to the New Gods. I knew of the characters from crossovers from when I was a kid, but I didn't have, the Kirby lens. I hadn't read all the Kirby stuff. I read all the omnibuses and really got into the characters. For me, as a fan of the characters through that method that I read Kirby stuff, to read this has been a pure joy because I feel that there's a modern telling of them. It's very today and very current, but yet they haven't thrown out the windows what I liked about the characters. What I really wanted to talk about with you, though, your exposure to them is very different than mine. It's more broken like mine was growing up. What was this like for you? Do you like the characters? Do you like their motivations? Do you like them in this crossover? Have you connected with them? Are you not? Where are you kind of at on them? Because I know you kind of got a mixed reaction to them in the past.
Yeah, it's when they announced this big crossover and everything going through the Green Universe, etc. I was a little bit nervous because I was like, I'm getting all the titles, so it doesn't bother me any. But I know a lot of people out there are going to be like, hey, I'm only getting Green Lantern. I'm only getting Green Lantern Corps or just Red or whatever book. There's people who are just getting the one title. So I was like, DC, what you doing here? And I was kind of worried on the end. But I got to tell you something. I'm loving this story to the point where I'm like, I think if people should pick these books up and give it a read through as an overarching, storyline. And as for the New Gods, I really like the mega power that they have and that they possess, and the fact that they are tossing around rings as if they were nothing. And that's a cool factor in seeing with the Green Lantern Corps, with any of the Corps saying, we got to retreat here. These guys have us outgunned. One New God is taking out entire squads of Lanterns and not batting an eye while they're fighting. It's a nothing to them, and you're just like, holy crap! That's something huge, and it's just the power levels and everything that's going on. And I'm not completely clueless. I'm about 90% clueless as to who the different people are, but they've done a really good job with explaining the different personalities behind the different New Gods. Especially you think back to when they got the Red Ring. I can't remember who that was that did it, but they had a code to them. They let the Red Lantern go through and do their thing. They got the ring for vengeance and go for justice or, the rage. Let them get the vengeance on who they wanted and then took the ring. And it was a neat moment because you get that cool dynamic between the two of them where the New God's like, hey, you're going to die after this. And he's like, yeah, I know. But I'm at peace, and he gave them that chance to have that moment of peace, and say, okay, I'm ready to go on. It's that warrior code, and I always like seeing that in these characters that that are supposedly these massive powerhouses. You want to see them have a code. You want to have them see a code of honor. They're going against our heroes, so they're quote unquote the bad guys, but they're not like. You kind of sympathize with them. You understand what they're doing. They got a job to do, just like we got a job to do, and they're right now butting heads. So I like seeing that, and I like this introduction to them. I'm really enjoying what I'm getting out of this.
You know what I like about them? There's a gray area. It's a lot of what you're touching on. It's very easy to call them. They're the villains of this story, but it's hard to call them villains. And I'm always much more interested in characters that play out that way than characters that are, definitely your, tried and true villains. Just because they're unique. I could see very much being in another story where we're rooting for the Highfather. And we're rooting for, we've actually been already rooting for Orion and Wonder Woman. I love the character. So it's not so simple. I also like that they feel disconnected. And what I mean by that is they should feel alien. They should feel foreign. They should feel like they're not one of us. That's done in a way where you understand their motivations, you understand what's driving them, you understand their code. Because Orion doesn't necessarily completely agree with the Highfather, but there's a code, and that's who's ruling them. And because of that, he's a soldier who's stepping in line. So it's not quite so simple. And that political intrigue, if that makes any sense, I find that very interesting.
You sit there and I'm wondering, okay, who's going to turn on who? Is anybody going to try to turn on the Highfather? Because they got a couple. The Metron, seems a little bit slim shady, a little bit sneaky, and I'm like, is he really Is he really part of the group, or is that just his personality? And that's some of the stuff where I'm trying to remember past experiences dealing with him, and I don't ever remember. I always had more of a positive image of all of them together, as being, never really doubting where anybody's loyalties lie when it comes to, the New Genesis side. Dark side, his people, they're always looking for a way to one-up each other. But I never got that feeling on New Genesis, and I'm kind of getting that here, but it's not something I'm saying, oh, this feels off to me, because the way they're presenting it, I'm like, okay, this is fitting for that kind of guy. He's an intelligence gatherer. He's, got his hands in all the fires. So he's going to have kind of that little bit of personality where he's going to, I know a little bit more than you do type of style to him, because that's who he is. And they're doing a really great job painting these brushes that I feel comfortable with him. And you mentioned Orion in Wonder Woman. This Orion that I'm reading feels like the exact same guy I was reading before. Yeah. That was something I was really glad to see, that crossing over titles, a character that I did have a knowledge of and I did have a comfort with, feels the same in these books as he did in Wonder Woman. So that was something I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, you touch on that, and I think that's a critically important thing to talk about right now. The idea that these characters feel the same. A lot of times you hear on the internet and whatever, a lot of negative about editorial. To me, that's a sign of great editorial. When you've got a character, the editor's job would be, and the writers, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand completely 100% how that works. I think it's in the best case scenarios, it's a combination of a great relationship between the editor and the writer, where they make sure they're doing their homework. Whether it's the editor getting materials to the writer, whether it's the writer doing research, or it's a happy mix of both. In either case, for us as the reader, it turns out like this, exactly what you're talking about. I feel like it's the exact same character that I've been reading. That's critical to me. That attach rate. I like continuity. I mind that they've rebooted the universe and, because of Flashpoint, we're connected to the old universe that way? No. To me, it's the ongoing, continuing story. Am I buying into it? Am I starting to follow the direction that they're going in? And is there now a history developing for these characters? And yes. And I really quite like the history that's being developed here. This is where it works. If you're disconnected and disjointed, all of a sudden you're trying to go, who is my character I'm following? We actually have some books at DC right now that I love, but are having a little bit of that problem. Where it's we're losing that connection between creative switches and things like that. We'll talk a little later about that. But this is where it's working, and working really well. And the Green Lantern verse in particular, I think our expectations as readers are really high. They're following up a creative team in the previous universe that continued on to this one, who've really been hitting a home run on connected storytelling. Yeah. So if you don't follow up with teams that are doing this, you're really going to anger Green Lantern fans. I consider myself a heavy Green Lantern fan now, and it's stories like this. I want to comment real quick on the continuing relationship between Kyle and Carol.
Yes.
I adore this relationship, and I'm a big Carol and Hal guy. I am so into them right now.
Yes.
I look on every panel. This is the way you develop a relationship between two characters in a comic book. It's been done over time. It's been done in a way where Kyle's not perfect. Carol's not perfect. But yet they're drawn together by what's good intrinsically about each one of them. They've been through some crazy situations. You know, with these new Guardians and now the new Gods and everything that's going on with Kyle, we see some harsh potential futures for Kyle in what we've seen recently in the 5 Year Later storyline for Kyle. So regardless of what happens on that end, Kyle's path that the Highfather's pointing out is something that we've seen in that book. That makes this story very intriguing for me because it works. It doesn't derail anything that's currently going on with these characters. It embraces it and makes it a part of this storyline. So now I'm thinking of the New Gods as bad guys, but I kind of want Kyle to go with the Highfather because maybe he can fix things. Yeah. Or Kyle can learn something from this relationship that will ultimately make him able to cope with what's coming. I love that Carol goes with him.
Yes.
And knowing what the danger is, potentially for both of them, they're like, hey, there's something going on between us here, and I've got your back. This is, to me, what a couple's all about. She brings something to him that he doesn't have on his own. He brings something to her that she doesn't have on her own. Both of them are partners. There's an equal vibe there. And I really love what's going on between the two of them. This is the kind of serialized storytelling I like as well, when you got a great relationship that's going on between two characters. And I'm shocked because I get traditional with some of the iconic characters. Carol and Hal goes back to the beginning of Green Lantern when Hal Jordan first was created. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I may like Kyle and Carol more.
And I kind of compare it to with the love I always had for Lois and Clark being together, and now I'm like, I really like Clark and Diana together. That's some pretty cool stories being told on both characters, and it's that same type of vibe that I have for Kyle and Carol. I'm like, this is a neat development. This is a neat love story going on between the two of them. Plus, it's told within the confines of some really cool Lantern stories. It's not just a side story where when he comes home from being a Lantern, hey, this is his girlfriend. No, she's right there in the trenches with him. She's throwing down, and she's keeping his secret that he's still alive. She's fighting alongside of it. She's not just a girlfriend. She's a partner. She's an equal. And I really like that with superhero stories where they have them in relationships. There has to be a reason why this person who arguably has the most powerful weapon in the universe would want to be with this girl. Well, guess what? There's a reason, is because she's really cool. She's strong. She's independent. She can throw down just as well as he can. She's, she in herself is also a hero. And, you got to see that type of strength and that reason and that logic, and that their relationship makes sense. I'm so happy that we're getting that and we're seeing it, and I'm rooting for them. And I've already lost, I've lost the one relationship that I was really rooting for with Jon Stewart. I'm like, no. And I'm like, no. I'm like, come on, Carol, Kyle, you got to make it. And, in the Red Lantern, we're still seeing glimmers that, of the couple possible relationships going on in Red Lantern with Rancor and Bleeze. You've got, of course, Guy and Ice. I'm like, okay, there's something going on that you could maybe have these characters have a happy ending, and I kind of want to see them have their moments of happiness. I don't want it just being all lovey-dovey, yay, happy, but I want to have these people that I consider, you look at them and you get close and you want them to be happy and actually have a good life, and it's good to see these moments. Of course, it does make you wonder where it's going to go, but I like seeing this nice balance.
You mentioned Jon Stewart, and I'd like to talk about him for a second, because the issue of Green Lantern Corps, the most recent one, there was a great battle between his squad and Uga and his warriors. And I really liked that one because it was very squad-based. I love seeing when the Green Lantern Corps, I know you're big into the whole military aspect, the police squad aspect of what goes on with the Green Lantern Corps. I'm into that too. And I always thought it was one of the nice distinctions about the Green Lantern Corps book is you tend to see more squad base. I like that distinction personally because it's fun, like in Hal's book, to see a Hal focus. I like that. It's a singular Green Lantern focus. In the Green Lantern Corps book, you got a John Stewart as your ringleader focus, but there's that squad mentality too, and that goes back to John's military background. I like that we don't forget that he's an architect, because there's that brilliant sequence where he's like, okay, fine, the military style's not working, then I'm going to bring the whole house down on you because I'm an architect and I can do that.
Yeah.
And I like that idea behind it because I've always been a big believer that one of the things I like about the military is you've got people in the military from all different kinds of backgrounds. And they have what makes them a great member of the various squads is the fact that they bring those skill sets to the table, and a good leader makes use of them. We see a lot of that happening with these different races on the Green Lantern Corps. I think it really does a nice job of representing what's really cool about the military. What it really looks like when you've got a great squad together. And I'm interested in that kind of stuff because it's not a world that I'm a part of, but it's a world that I appreciate. So it's neat when you see it in this book, but I really enjoyed that issue because I've always been a fan of Arisia, and it was cool to see her have a play. This idea that the constructs are different depending on the background of the characters is something that I love that the books have embraced, because I think it's only made seeing a different Lantern more exciting, because you want to see what are they going to do? How are they going to manifest? And we see that much more these days, and I think it's been something that was put into the mythos that it's great that it's been embraced, because it makes a great visual experience for us as the readers. Now, the artwork in all of this series, I should say not just Green Lantern Corps, throughout this entire event, I thought has been really spectacular. It's been fun to read each of these books because we're seeing some really dynamic artwork.
Oh, God, yeah. And that's, when we talk artwork, we're talking the full spectrum. Mm-hmm. Pencils, inks, coloring, lettering, just all of that side is just doing some absolute amazing stuff. And that's something I always like about the green books. And when I say the green books, I'm including Red, I'm including Guardians, I'm including Sinestro, the full spectrum that's associated with the Ring. I probably should stop calling them green books. I'm going to start calling them the Ring books, because all of these titles that have a ring associated with it, they're doing some really amazing stuff with the artwork where they really make things pop. And a lot of it's coloring where they're really hitting the nice accents. A lot of that is on the inking. It's funny. I'm starting to notice, different inkers now. I'm starting to get the groove of understanding, hey, I think wow, I got that one right. I'm seeing different styles where, the inking going on along with some of the pencils. It's, for me, especially in the Ring books, I really look for that kind of stuff. And I actually, my art read-throughs are some of my most enjoyable stuff within these titles, because I'm just looking at the pictures. I'm just looking at what's in front of me telling the story. And it's something that I'm like, man, this is kind of neat. And I am really looking forward to when this God's Head comes out in Absolute. It's got to do it. I'm hoping they throw all this together, because I want that oversized so I can just sit there and just spend some time studying and just looking at this stuff, man. I'm really digging God's Head. I didn't think that I was worried about it. I knew it'd be probably good because there's some good creative teams, but I didn't think I'd have this level of passion for the story.
I want to jump back, and I know I'm kind of going a little backwards, but I do want to compliment the Green Lantern title. When we see Hal's battle, we've seen Hal as this figurehead, and you see him go against Orion, which is really the way to do that. And that was incredible, seeing Hal versus Orion, seeing what happened on the way to Mogo.
Yeah.
That was, Mogo doesn't have his ring now, so there is no contact with Mogo. It's taken a major player out of the game. Their whole base has been Mogo. Mogo's been the source of getting new rings. So now they've basically been shut down as a way to even replenish their forces. And that part will throw them into disarray. And I really liked that we didn't see them give up because of it, We saw them decimated, though. This is the Green Lantern. This is the most powerful weapon in the universe. This is something that, we as readers kind of embrace about the whole Green Lantern family of books. And to see that happen, knowing what we know, these kind of events show you why you want to see all the Lanterns come together and fight. We saw that in things like Blackest Night. To see it play out here is really cool. I wonder if this is going to be the event or the thing that starts to bring back the Blue Lanterns.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping, no pun intended, when we're talking about the Blues. But, that's, again, I really dig Satan Walker. I dig his relationship. And part of me is thinking that's how we're going to help start getting Mogo back. Because what if Mogo, instead of becoming a Green Lantern, becomes a Blue Lantern?
Wow, that'd be cool.
Yeah, because the main thing, it's, Mogo, if Mogo inspires hope, which he does, or she does, excuse me.
And St. Walker as well, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, could you imagine just, the base of the Green Lanterns is a Blue Lantern. Mm-hmm. Just the one, power levels jacking up, two, really cool storyline, because with Mogo, and, I've found, when they really started getting into her and actually, letting us have dialogue with her and letting the different Lanterns have dialogue, like that's a neat character. I never really appreciated as much as I have these past, this last year, that we're really getting to see since she's been reconstructed, and then they make it the base and all that. And I was like, man, that's kind of, that's one of the ones from this story I want to see come back. Just because of the connection that everybody had. And just, you talk about just, decimation and scrambling. Improvise, adapt, overcome. It's, a catchphrase that's thrown out a lot with the military, with law enforcement, with anybody who has that physical type of jobs where you can't just lay down and say, it didn't work. No, you got to keep going. You got to persevere through it. That's some of the really cool stuff we're seeing. Green Lantern Corps title. Just where that constant scramble, got to keep going and got to keep fighting through. Plan A doesn't work. Okay, let's go plan B, C, D. No quit, no surrender. And it's some of the neat stuff that is the Green Lantern Corps that's always, that's pulled me in and got me going, hoorah.
You are wrong, interloper. Know that you gaze upon Shakavat, the closest thing to a god that you will find upon this earth. Kathoom! That's the greatest thing in the world. I just love the fact that there's in here, we are the wheel. Close doesn't count. I mean, it's just great stuff. It makes me chuckle. It adds some validity to them, because that's, Guy went there to take this guy down. Now all of a sudden he's facing off with the wheel. The journey of Guy throughout the Red Lantern's books, in the beginning of this one especially, I so want to see him happy with Tora, but yet he's Guy, and he's so interesting this way. So it's an interesting dilemma with him when you get to see these sequences. Guy as a personality and as a character, seeing Baz join up with him, all of this stuff is really incredibly interesting. I loved how this story played out, where Baz and Guy kind of team up together, and they're trying to make this decision. Do we go out there and hook up with the other Green Lanterns? Do we stay here and defend Earth? Guy's like, wait a minute. I fought to defend Earth. This is what the Red Lanterns do. I can't shirk that duty. And if this is our last stand, fine, we're going to take that with us. My respect level for Baz kicked up a notch as well. Because Baz is like, all right, I'm in. But I liked that journey. I liked seeing Baz get there gradually, because Guy and Baz should be different. Their presentation should be different. This was really nicely handled. And it got me to the point where at the end, when you see that ending sequence where, Guy's like, but unlike them, we ain't going to stop until the job's done. You see him kind of rallying right now. And, Guy's fully back in the game. Look at the eyes. The rage is there. Very well done to see what is motivating Guy. What's going to get Guy to the point where he's going to be that guy that went up against Atrocitus again. This did it. He's there. He's ready to go. He's in the game, and I want to see the game played. This is a really great drama piece that they're writing right here. You do this chapter after chapter with this book and keep it going, shifting lenses along the way, but we know we're progressing the overarching storyline. It just increases buy-in. And you mentioned that this being an event that people should read. It doesn't matter if you're reading the Green Lantern books or not. That Godhead one-shot is really a good starting point with this. It gives you everything you need. It fills you in on where the Green Lantern story is. So if you're like, I'm a lapsed Green Lantern reader, or maybe I never read the Green Lantern books, grab the one-shot. And that'll really tell you what you need to know to decide if this is a story for you. Then from that, you can gradually start reading the acts leading up to this point. It's a very easy to jump on story, and it's very epic, it's very big, and it's very cool. So I can't give this story more than the highest possible recommendation on excitement level. Just really well written, well drawn. It's everything you want. Great creative teams involved with this. Kudos to all the writers, because you've got a lot of people that are gelling together, and the art teams. The art teams are really just keeping a nice flow going.
Oh God, yeah. And it's funny as you're talking, I'm just nodding my head. Yes. This is one of those read-throughs that because we sit there. I put like a reverence to the Sinestro Wars, and I still have that that feeling towards it, and just like the recharge with Green Lantern Corps. I think God's Head is going to be one of those stories that we're going to see, but when everything's said and done, we're going to see something. The face of the Green Lanterns the face of the Ring universe is going to be different when everything's said and done. And I think that when you have an event that the end result is going to be long-term, permanent, and going forward, things are going to look a little different. And because there's no way they can have this interaction with such powerful forces that. Right now, the new gods have the mindset that the humans or the lower life forms shouldn't be in possession of such a powerful weapon. So it's now not just about the life equation, which they do want. They also want to get rid of all the rings. So they're looking at pulling everybody, taking rings from people. Uh-huh. So, and I thought it was kind of interesting because Hal had that moments where he's like, hey, we're going to police up unauthorized ring usage. And then that had people looking at him going, hey, what do you mean by who are we to judge? And there was a lot of debate amongst the different Green Lanterns about, authorized ring usage. Well, now we have this outside party who's saying, none of you are worthy. We're going to take it away from all of you because we don't want you risking destroying the universe. There's going to be some cool ramifications long-term for the Green Lantern Corps, for all the other corps.
Yeah, I agree. And those stories like this should have an impact. And you should enjoy them and be totally involved in them when they're going on. But afterwards, there should be something that clearly is going to leave after effects. This is going to change things. It's going to leave after effects. Some positive, some negative. Whatever they are, it's going to change, the comic book world for the Green Lanterns as we know it. And that's part of great serialized storytelling, too, a sense of progression. And this is something that I really am excited about. I want to see where these go. So I want to jump off of this to our next chat, which is going to be Batgirl number 35. This is Burned by Cameron Stewart and Brendan Fletcher as writers. Babs Tarr, artist. Cameron Stewart breakdowns. Maurice Wicks on colors. Jared K. Fletcher letters. Cameron Stewart cover. Babs Tarr and Kevin Nolan variant covers. Dave Weiglos is the associate editor. Chris Conroy is the editor, and Mark Doyle the group editor. And apologies for any name butchery. And Dave's last name is Wielgos, and I know I totally tore that apart, and I apologize. The reason why I want to apologize, this is an interesting journey on this book for me, because I was a huge fan of the Batgirl run prior to this. So there's a tone that was set in the Gail Simone book that was darker than this. I was always interested in the art of this. When they started showing the art pages on this, I got excited for it. I love this style of art, so I was into that. My big worry, though, is, for me, it's always as a fan, a lot of what I talked about in the last segment. What is the continuity like? How do I believe this is the same? 34 issues in, I've been really enjoying what the writer prior to this has been delivering. How are you delivering to me an experience that feels like it's connected? Well, I got to say, it's funny. I read this issue twice. My experience the first time was one of being very tentative, but gradually growing more and more appreciative of the connections that they deliberately made to the previous book. There's allusions to the fact that Batgirl's been through a lot. Because of that, she just needs a life change, a status quo change. But we're not throwing the old roommate out the window. They're still friends. Everything they've been through, they're still friends. She's still a part of this. Smart move there. We are moving her with a new roommate to give her a new status quo, which explains kind of lifestyle choices and changes for Barbara. She's trying to have a little bit more fun in her life, but it's also a part of trying to find herself with everything she's been through. She is reading a little young to me, which I'm getting used to. And I guess where I'm choosing to, or how, it's kind of working for me is she always was this age. It's more of everything going on with her life, with the fact that she was shot by the Joker and then had to work her way back from that, kept her kind of in a place where she had to be a lot more mature than maybe her age would show. Now she's getting a chance to lean back a little bit. But in spite of all that, we're still seeing an intelligent, very smart Barbara who is still Batgirl. I loved the way that they handled the costume and that there's a story behind the costume change. It isn't just, hey, I'm brighter, happier Barbara now. This is my costume. It isn't that simple. And even that I'm brighter, happier Barbara now isn't that simple as well. There's a lot of connecting threads to the old series here. So it was funny on the surface when I was reading it through the first time, it was very tentative. The second time through, really enjoyed this. That's my experience, though. Where are you at on this?
Well, I don't want to be one of those guys who sits there and says, "This isn't Gail Simone. I hate it." When before I read the first issue, I'm like, "Don't do that, Jim. Don't do that, Jim," because I have a habit of doing that. But I'm gonna say, after my first read, when I put down the book, I have to admit, I said, "This isn't Gail Simone. I hate it,"
and that's okay.
I really that first read through. You said you were tentative. I was beyond tentative in my dislike for it, and I was just like, "Man, what are they doing?" And I'm like sitting there. It's one of those, stressing myself out, going, "They've ruined Barbara. What have they done?" Because that first read through. And now, at multiple read-throughs, the opinion has changed. But I'm going to give you guys my first read-through. I felt like this person wasn't at all the person I read before. And it was funny because the old universe Barbara and then the new universe Barbara, they felt like the same person to me. It was that same style. I could see just they're in different parts of their life, different ages. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is still the same person. At her core, that was still the same person to me. This, first read through, this did not read like that Barbara. And then plus also a change in the art style, which I agree with you is absolutely really nice looking, really beautiful artwork, but it was so dramatically different than what was before. So all these factors were really heading me in a negative, and I had to put down the book and just take a moment, breathe a little bit, relax, come back to it later. And second, third read throughs, I started, you start looking at stuff and there's seeing whether do I still see that same Barbara? Do I still see that same character that I so loved before? And like you said, she's reading like she's younger, but she's really reading like her age. The previous one, she was, keeping a lot of things heavy. And you go back to the end of Gail Simone's run, she talks, Barbara kind of lets it out that, hey, this is, she had the weight of the world on her shoulder and she was letting go with a lot of that stuff. She had learned that her brother was still alive. She had all these positive stuff going on. It's like, you know what? I need a clean slate. And you could see her at the end of Gail Simone's run saying, I need a clean slate. Right. So that kind of, again, when I was reading through this, I can see the transition. I can see why she's doing this. And then you get a couple moments where she does stuff that only Barbara would be able to do with the photographic memory, with the throwing down of the one mugger, with everything that, she does have some Batgirl essence. She does have that Babs moments. I'm like, okay, this is still, she looks a little different. She's acting a little differently, but she's, in her head, it's like she wants that happy life. She wants that positive life. So she's actively pursuing it. So I'm like, okay, my friend is trying to make her life better. That's why she looks like a little bit differently, but at her core, she still is that cool person, and I can it's still not the same as what it was, but I'm no longer at a hatred moment. I'm curious to see where the character goes and curious to see how things progress through it.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not as far off from you as I may sound. I think one of the differences you and I have is I tend to read a lot of the news about books before they come out. So I was prepared for the fact that this was going to be a drastically different tone switch. Am I right that you saw the art, but you didn't necessarily know that the tone shift was going to be this different?
I really didn't see the artwork.
Okay.
I avoid the news stuff because I don't want, it's funny. We do a spoiler podcast, but that's part of the reason we also do a spoiler warning, because I don't want the spoilers. I want, as I open my book, to see what's going on. And just, that's how I like to get it. And then after I read it, and then I'll do research on it. I'll look into it and I'll try to see what is going on and why this happened. Is this, because like there's a lot of times with the stories, there'll be a filler story. I'm like, is this the permanent thing or is this new? Oh, okay, no, this is, I feel, okay, but going into the book, I like going into these things blind as best I can because, I don't know, for me, that's my enjoyment of it. And so for this, I was really completely surprised by it. I was completely just, what the heck,
Well, our experiences are our goals are pretty much the same. One of the reasons why we do spoiler warnings at the beginning of this is because I enjoy talking about the books after the fact, and I don't want to have to keep going, and if you haven't read this part, stop here, because it would be incredibly awkward in our discussions. But we don't want to ruin that experience for anybody who's currently reading the book. I also recognize the fact that there are people listening to this that are like, I'm not reading that book. I want to know what goes on in that book because this is going to be my chance to decide whether or not this is the right book for me. And there's a point to that as well. In the case of this one, I like seeing the news because for me, it's fun to see when creative changes are coming. It actually helps me decide a lot of times for the show. Like we were talking before this, I'm like, let's talk about some of these books because status quo changes are pretty big.
Huge.
Yeah, and there were certain, like Catwoman, which we're going to talk about next, I wanted to talk about as well for similar reasons because there's a big status quo change there. It's always interesting to talk about this, especially in the case of Gail Simone, because it goes beyond just these 34 issues. In the previous continuity, she had multiple runs on Birds of Prey. This is really a creator who's touched on Batgirl for a long time and really left an indelible mark. Very hard for a creative team to follow that up. The thing that I think that they keyed on here is, first of all, make sure you tell me what happened with the roommate. Yeah. And I like that we don't have to give up the roommate, the previous roommate. She's still friends with her. They lived together. They bonded. I really appreciate that choice of keeping them in contact. I also appreciate the choice of, we're going to do a new costume, but we're not just going to randomly do a new costume. We're going to bring in Black Canary and give you a storytelling reason why there's a new costume. I like at that moment, I'm kind of like, wow, they're really going out of the way in this issue. That's why the tentative part of me was growing more and more into this as I was reading, because I was with you. And I'm still in that place where she's reading a little young for me. I'm going to have to get used to that. But they're doing so much to connect it to the previous continuity that I'm really appreciating those threads. And that's what's really winning me over to this book. I think the artwork's spectacular. I think the story's really good. I'm into it. It's not. Here's the funny part. If it was a different character, I would be going, this is awesome. The only thing that's, and this isn't a knock on the creative team at all, it's because I'm used to Barbara the way she was, that I'm getting used to this status quo change for her. It's like running into an old friend after they've moved away and gotten new friends and their lifestyles changed a bit.
Yeah.
You kind of are connected to this person going, okay, this is still my friend, but I've got to get used to them again. We're kind of reconnecting, getting to know each other again. And it's that kind of thing for me. But I'm finding that I still like my friend. So, that's probably the most sincere compliment I can give this book is they're doing a great job of reminding me that I still like my friend. And that means that they get who Barbara is. The little young part, though, is probably the only criticism I'd give right now. But that's the point, is to make her a little brighter, to make this book a little less dark in the Bat universe. And I get it, and I don't know that I don't know that it's not working. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, and I agree with you about the explanation behind the costume change. That was nice that her van with all her gear and everything blew up. and it's, that's where all her costumes was. So she had to create something else because she had to take down this, the Black Book dude. And even the explanation as to how they blew up, because that was something that second and third read through, I was able to appreciate that even more, because Barbara's laptop gets stolen by this, bad guy hacker type dude who's going through it. And she had a defensive system loaded in there so that if anybody tried to gain access or tried to, use her information, it would self-destruct. And in a way, that's a good protection and a good cover for, the secret identity, for everything. So, her equipment doesn't get in the hands of the bad guys, etc. So that does fit Barbara, but it does lend to a problem when you have massive incendiaries in a confined area like the warehouse, and everything went up. So her and Black Canary's gear were destroyed, and it was, there was some light levity to it. And I think for me, part of that levity and just part of Canary was also throwing me off, because I've still got to get adjusted to this Canary, because, in my head, Canary would never lose her temper and Canary cry her phone. Now, granted, it was a funny moment, and I chuckled, and just her getting frustrated dealing with insurance people and finding out later that it was Barbara who accidentally caused her warehouse to explode. So adds to anger and just, butting heads between the two of them. But it did, there's still some groove I got to get. I got to get a feeling of these two, because, every Barbara, Dinah relationship has always been mutual respect, friendship, trust. It was beyond just two heroes. They were friends. They were, they were sisters. And I don't have that complete vibe right now going between them. So that's something I want to see of them interacting and see how they have going forward, how those two characters get along, because that's an important relationship to me.
And I agree with everything you're saying, except for if you look at the ending of Birds of Prey, the ending of that run, like the last issues of that, you could see why there was a rift between these two. So I like that this book's acknowledging that and using that, and that's where I feel that relationship's working. I do feel that Dinah's reading a little younger too. Yeah. Because of this. So I think they both have the same thing. Here's the thing. I don't really have too much of a problem with all of that, because this isn't something they've done 57 times in the New 52 with these two characters. Status quo changes I don't always mind when it's written good. I'm really this is a good book right now. I'm not at great yet, and there may be people who haven't read Batgirl that are going at this going, what are you guys, nuts? This is great. You maybe don't have the baggage I do. And it's good baggage. That's the thing. I really loved the series up to this point. Here's the thing, though. I could wind up loving this. And I see a lot of potential in this for me to get to that point. For a creative team to follow up what they did, that's a huge compliment. Because it is a very different status quo. I am getting used to it. I'm intrigued. I liked the whole resolution of her using her computer skills to run a worm inside the guy's head, so that way he would lose all the information about her. Showing her technical skills. We've got a Batgirl who could have potentially become Oracle on a different path. I like that. We're bringing in skills that we as readers have known and loved about her. So that was a smart move. I like when she's talking to Dinah, that she's got that friend that she could be a confidant with to tell her, hey, somebody knows who I am, and they just texted me. I got a problem. What a great cliffhanger ending. I'm anxious to see where this goes. So they've done a very good job of giving me enough to take me out of the tentative state to, I'm starting to like this. I'm not where I would be normally for Batgirl, but I can get there if we keep going with this kind of momentum. That's what you need to do at this point. Keep building a momentum for me with this. What I don't want to see is 6 months from now, we swap out creative teams, and we're heading in a new direction yet again.
Right.
Because once you start doing that with books, then you start to lose an identity. Batgirl's had a very well-defined identity in the 34 issues before this that I really liked. This, I'm into so far. I want to see where it goes. And that's the kind of where I'm at this point.
Yeah, I'm similar. I think you're probably a little bit more positive about this than I am, but I'm not at a hate stage anymore. I'm definitely I'm curious where it's gonna go, what they're gonna do, and it's not on a chopping block yet, but it's one of those things where I could actually see me possibly putting this on a chopping block if we get 6 issues down the line. We're not getting a continuation of growth. We're not getting, it's just if she stays how she is and there's no further development of her, this could possibly get put on a block for me, which is weird for me to say because Batgirl is one of those titles that has never even remotely been thought of as a block. It's always been, I've always argued it's in my top 5. So for me now to say that there's a possibility it could get put on the block is huge.
Let me ask you this. When it comes to Batgirl, where do you want it to go? Because you're right, we're in a different place with it. And it may be, I honestly think our big difference is I knew this was coming.
Right.
So I walked into the first issue in a different mindset than you did. So my first read-through was more tentative, where it sounds like for you, you're like, what?
Yeah.
And then got tentative.
Yeah.
So I think, whereas my reaction to the news was, what? Like the artwork, but what are you doing? And then read the issue and found myself pleasantly surprised along the way at the amount of, because I really, my big worry was with this, there's going to be this dramatically jarring status quo change that has zero connection to what came before. I was pleasantly surprised at how much connection there was to what came before, and I think I had worked up in my mind where I was worried this was going to go, and I was surprised by how much it connected, and I think that's why, you're right, I'm in a different place than you are. Where would you like it to go?
Well, I don't mind her having a little bit lighter and a little bit more of a life and more positive, not so dark. I don't mind that, but I still do want to see the butt-kicking superhero that she always was to me. And we get some really cool computer moments. We get, as I said, we get some Barbara moments where she's going through doing the recall with, even though she was in, a heavily intoxicated state, she's still able to break down what happened at that party. She still has that intellect. She still's got the computer savvy. And we do see her throw down with the one punk where she just wipes the floor with that guy without even breaking a sweat. So those are some, I want to keep seeing those moments. I still want to see that hero that I root for, and I think that's, as long as we keep getting those moments where we get the Barbara, we get the Batgirl moments in this, it'll alleviate, as long as I keep seeing my friend in there and just, she's looking for a little bit better life, she's looking for a positive, I'm like, that's cool, because we just talked about with the Green Lanterns how I was happy with the different relationships and I wanted to see the positive stuff going on. I didn't want it all happy, joy, but I did want good things to happen. Well, it's the same thing with her. I do want positive, good things to happen for her, but I don't want to lose Batgirl. I don't want to lose Barbara. That is a really cool person, character, and hero. It's kind of a fine line where I do want some of the darkness, because if you have a bat in your name, there's gonna be some darkness. But I do like the fact that she is the bright light of the darkness, and I want to see that.
Isn't the darkness there, though, in the fact that she is trying to build a new life kind of outside of it? And I guess what I'm saying is I would like to see some more, like, here's the thing. You mentioned the fact that she was drinking and all that was happening. I would like some, as this goes on, some more development that this is a girl who's trying to find herself in a life outside of that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I necessarily want to see her always away from all that either. I'd like to see her eventually to the point where she can go back to all that, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
That would be the logical evolution from this. But I don't have a problem with the idea that I have been through so much that, I really need to develop a life away from all that. I'm assuming this all takes place after Batman Eternal.
That's how I'm reading it.
Okay. So
because, if you think about Batman Eternal, she still had her full gear. She still had everything that was, her.
And that's very dark for her, that story.
Yeah. So it could be also the end of Batman Eternal could also be something that pushes her to, because, this first issue, her father wasn't mentioned at all. And I think that's something else I want to see is I want to see James Gordon, in the senior. I want to see her and her dad, because that'll definitely give us an indication of where this takes place as compared to Batman Eternal, because again, that could be something else where if we find out he's out of prison and everything's good and he's back with the force and all the positive stuff, like, okay, yeah, that will help reinforce that, yes, this is the same person that I've always known.
Except I appreciate the choice to focus heavily on Barbara moving right now, and keep it vague.
Yes.
The idea that she's so busy right now and getting her life together and sorted out gives a good excuse as to why she hasn't had a lot of contact with Dad. I wouldn't mind if later on when they do bring Dad in, which I'm hoping eventually. I'm with you. I actually agree with you. I'm hoping when they do, there's maybe some acknowledgement that there was some off-camera phone calls. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a good way to do that. I think as a creative team, they're in an interesting corner with that right now, because you don't really want to reveal to us as the readers what happens to Gordon in Batman Eternal at the moment.
Right.
But at the same time, it's okay for us to know this is Batgirl after that. So I'm okay. It's funny. I'm okay with all that, yet I agree with you. I want to see the same things you do. So we did eventually to see that, and that will be a connecting point for me as well. I think for a first issue where they were trying to do that, they've done an interesting job. And I do want to... Well, let me ask you this. One issue in, with everything you've said, are you interested in more?
Yeah. Okay. I'm definitely at the interested, curious stage as to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want more information. I would definitely continue reading. And one of the things I sometimes break down in my head is, if I wasn't doing the podcast, would I continue reading this?
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely would continue reading this just to see where it goes. As I said, it's not on the chopping block yet, but this is a title that I could see maybe down the line. And for me, in putting something on the chopping block, it takes a while to get there. As I said, I would need 6 more issues under this creative team before I even would make a decision. Am I going to put it on the chopping block? And when a book is put on the chopping block, that doesn't mean it's gone immediately. That means I now start reading it thinking of, do I need to keep this? Do I want to keep this? So, for something to get put on a chopping block, still then we'll have a whole nother, probably, 4 to 5, 6 months down the line before I would make the final, this is the last issue I'm going to buy. So, it's not there yet, but it's the fact that this could possibly be there is something that's huge to me, as I said, because Batgirl was never even remotely close to, it never even entered my head. Batgirl was always one of those titles where, when you play the game, if you can only pick 5 titles, Batgirl was always one of those ones like, man, I can't give up Batgirl. There's too much coolness that goes on with it. So it's for me, to looking that it could possibly one day be a chopping block title, that's huge.
Yeah, I think we as readers go through those phases, though, especially when your creative teams change, because you've got to kind of feel things out, and you can't do that in a single issue. You just can't when it's been this kind of a status quo change. I'm far from being a reader anymore that sticks with a title just because of character. I've got to really have a story that's drawing me in. Now, there's certain characters that I collect, but what ends up happening in those cases, if I'm collecting it just to keep filling in, I'm stockpiling. And I guess my tolerance of stockpiling has shrunk only in the sense that I have so many things that I want to read that I have a hard time building a larger stockpile of things that I'm clearly like, I'm only stockpiling this because I am not sure if I even like it anymore. That becomes kind of my jumping off point. And it's just because I've already got a stockpile of things that I desperately want to read, which we naturally run into throughout comics. So it's an interesting spot. Batgirl right now, though, for me, you're right. We're definitely in a different spot because this isn't on the chopping block for me. I dug it. It's just, it's not my previous Batgirl, and I'm not there yet, but I could see myself getting there. It's honestly the age skewing thing with her.
That's huge for me. That is a huge thing.
Yeah. So, I think the issue's the same. It's just in a different place for us both.
Yeah. And it's funny because if this wasn't Batgirl, if this was a character, Wonder Teen, Say if that was the character and it wasn't Barbara Gordon, it was Jane Doe or whatever.
Or Misfit.
I would absolutely say this is an awesome book. This is a cool character. This is kind of neat. I like the look. And I would have a completely different reaction to it. And that's part of the reason why I'm curious to see where this goes, because actual writing, the physical ability of writing, story being told, the artwork and whatnot, just that physical action is good. It's a really good story and really talented, and again, it's beautiful artwork. It's but the fact, because it is Barbara, because it's Batgirl, that's where my issue is with it. Talent wise, these are all very very talented creators. So it's not that issue, and that's one of the things that it's hard for me to really say. That's why I don't say I hate it anymore, because this is a talented creation here. It's just different. And
can we follow up on the next issue? And the reason why I'm saying that, I think at this point we're kind of caught in, and I don't mean this in a bad way, we're kind of caught in this trap of we've kind of determined what our problem is. But I think it's interesting. And what I actually would encourage listeners to do, if you're a Batgirl reader, whether you've been reading or you're new to the book and this was your first issue, please consider calling in. I would love to hear people's thoughts on this, because I'm interested in this, because I think it's an interesting, this is a big change, and it's a big risk for the creative team, and I admire that. I'm enjoying the story, and I would not in a million years call this bad. I honestly found myself being drawn into it, which is, I find an interesting thing when you've got a new status quo like this. That's your goal. So they did what they needed to do. They got their hooks into me. I want to see where it goes, and they got their hooks into you too, because you're in for the next issue, which is the point in a new status. If you're saying right now, I'm done, I'm jumping off, then they haven't done their job.
Right.
If you're like, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm sticking around, they did enough. They did what they needed to do at this point. So that's a positive. Let's visit this book again, though, because for us, it's a unique situation to talk about on the show. So I think it'd be fun to revisit it again, just because I think it's an interesting topic.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Definitely.
Can we talk about Catwoman?
Oh, yeah. Our next issue will be Catwoman number 35. It's written by Genevieve Valentine with art by Gary Brown, colors by Lee Luffridge, letters by Sal Cipriano and Taylor Esposito, with cover by Jay Lee and June Chung. Monster variant cover by Josh Middleton. Assistant editor is Matt Humphrey, with editor Mark Doyle.
Okay, I was chomping at the bits to say this. Oh my God, thank you. What this creative team coming on board. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate Catwoman before. I enjoyed Catwoman, but Catwoman is a character who I've loved. The Brubaker run. I'm going to go back to that one when Ed Brubaker came on. Great stuff. Doug Munch did a great Catwoman years ago. Really enjoyed that book. This is a character I grew up with. Really enjoy Catwoman. There's been some critical runs. This is like Catwoman meets Gotham Central cool. The status quo change was so welcome. The creative team change was so welcome. And I feel bad saying that because I feel like I'm trashing what came before it. I really was enjoying the book, so it wasn't a bad book. I was digging it. But there's a difference between digging it and going, whoa, this was totally awesome. One issue in, I'm really salivating over this, which to me says, I was digging Catwoman before, but I wasn't on a level that I really want to be with Catwoman. This first issue, if this is what's coming, I am so sold and on board for this. I am very anxious to hear your thoughts on this, because this book, Catwoman number 35, if you haven't been a Catwoman reader, whatever reason this book didn't grab you, haven't been reading it, I give the highest possible recommendation to reading Catwoman number 35. This was one of the better books that I've read this month.
My reaction is boom goes the dynamite, man. This was outstanding. Mm-hmm. This, the previous discussion we had on Batgirl, where I was like, I don't know about this creative team, and it was this thing, complete opposite reaction with this.
Oh, yeah.
And like you, I really, really loved Catwoman before this. So any comments I'm making, it's nothing knocking what was before. What was before was absolutely outstanding. We go into this changing who the character is, but I 100% believe that the woman in Catwoman 35 is the exact same as 34 and before. It has that same feel to it, but there is that change. It's like the evolution, the growth, the tweaking, and it's everything that led up to this. So this, for me, was an absolute, I was like, wow, this is one of those things where, like, bam, they just turned it up again. Changing around who she is, you're starting to see just the growth of the crime boss that's going to run Gotham that we're seeing in Batman Eternal, all these different stuff that's about to happen and go down. I was just like, man, this is some cool moments here. I really dig this, and I'm really excited for Catwoman.
Here's the thing, the crime boss thing I've been enjoying, but it's kind of like been Catwoman in general right now. I've been taking Catwoman. It's been good. And it sounds like actually you and I might be in different places about where we've been with Catwoman. I've been taking Catwoman. It's a great character. It's okay. Been, having fun with it. Never was on the chopping block. I was enjoying my read. This turned Catwoman to a top of the stack book for me, which Catwoman has not been at a top of the stack book for me in the New 52. The artwork, first thing I saw was the Jay Lee cover, and I'm just like, wow, that's cool. Then I started turning the artwork. The interiors are different art, but it's exactly the kind of gritty art that I would want for this. It is reminiscent to me of what I really liked about the artwork in Gotham Central, and the reason why I go to that is that was very street level. Crime, true crime kind of oriented kind of stuff. It's a lot of what I think the Gotham TV series is based on. They went kind of to Gotham Central as kind of a point to pull from. But the artwork really matches. I love that we're in her head. Like, I'm doing this because I don't have confidence in others to rebuild the city. I care about this. There's an intrinsically good motivation in what she's doing. But she has to go to a different sort of place. She has to acknowledge her family background. And now she's like the lost daughter that's come in, and she's being called on that. Okay, it's great. It's all well and fine to say you're the daughter of the lion, but, her, like, person who should be her right hand is questioning that.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting tentative relationship she has with the other crime bosses. She has to back up what she's saying. And she's taking on a leadership role. She's trying to rebuild the city using dirty money, but explaining to them this is what's best for business. And she's right. There's a history of that. So she's actually presenting a very intelligent argument for what she's doing. I am so drawn into the intrigue of all this. And yet, in spite of all that, she's still Catwoman. Like, she's got the style and the swagger of Catwoman, but yet she's got to be this mob boss now. And that part is like, I've locked this up in this safe. These are these memories I can't let go of. But that's where they are. They're locked away because this is 100% who I need to be right now. And if I don't do that, they won't believe me. And I need them to believe me.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, how she's, telling the other crime bosses about they've got to keep Gotham. They've got to bring Gotham back because it is best for business. Because in the real world, some of the biggest criminal enterprises, some of the more successful mob families and drug cartels, all these things, they have done dramatic things to improve their area. They've taken care of their neighborhood. They've, kept the bad element out. Well, bad element part of the time is their competition, but other times it's things that could bring down the neighborhood because, you know what? They want their foundation strong. They can't do whatever illegal activities they're doing if the world is completely falling apart. And I was so happy to see that, she's doing good and she's doing it, but there is a legitimate and honest reason. And there's a reason why these crime bosses would be skeptical, but would say, she's got a point. It makes sense. We can't, you can't do business if everybody else is, desolate. So we need to make sure that society is good. We need to make sure we have these working classes. Now, while we're at it, we'll kill these people, but, we're not going to kill everybody. We're not going to destroy, we're not animals, and I love just that kind of that style that we're seeing with these different bosses and especially the fact that is taking over it, she is taking power, but she's not doing it with a gang war. She's not doing it with violence. She's doing it with logic and intelligence. And again, she can't 100% trust these guys because they're gonna stab her in the back eventually, or try to take over, or maybe make a muscle play if they think she's at a weak position. But she is going to, give them a reason to continue to follow her. And I like just, again, that dynamic and just that dichotomy where it's not just about the cat burglar thief, which was some really cool stories, some really great Catwoman moments. We're now seeing the intellect. We're seeing the strategery that is Selina Kyle. And I'm like, this is awesome.
She'd whip you for that. I like the whole interaction with the Hasegawa family, the daughter, and this idea that, the daughter isn't necessarily playing along with dad. And Catwoman seeing an opening there, a potential opening there. And there's something to that where I like the strategery of the fact that she's looking at the family dynamics and where she can find potential opportunities. That kind of stuff is really cool to me. It adds to me, Catwoman, what's intriguing about her is her smarts. There's a savvy there. She's this thief. Watching Gotham right now, what I really love about the actress playing Catwoman on Gotham right now is, she's young, and we're seeing an early version of Catwoman, but we're also seeing that this is a street-smart cat burglar. She is very observant of the world around her and picks out details and pays attention to details in order to take advantage of situations. She knows the world backwards and forwards because she needs to be able to escape on a moment's notice. This Catwoman is a seasoned veteran where she's looking at the whole situation. I've done the chase thing with Batman. I learned a lot during the whole chase thing with Batman. And cat burglaring and everything that I've done leading up to this point has put me in this spot. So those observations and the way that she handles and carries herself differently depending on who she's talking to. I love the dealings with the dad and the way that she's showing him respect, but also recognizing what his issues would potentially be. Hey, this could be mutually beneficial for the two of us. What do you think? She presents it in a way that gives him an empowerment and respect, while at the same time not giving away any of her own. There's a way that whole situation was carried that I'm like, I want to see this as a movie. This is really cool.
Yeah, those are some clever dialogue and just some really great getting into the mindset of, criminal element. And again, there's such a level of intelligence that you need to have this type of criminal empire, to be this massive crime boss, and both sides, on Selina and on the what's his name? You need to have that. You can't just be some gut reacting idiot. You got to have that intelligence. And I loved seeing just the play out between the two of them. That was some really just great again, it was just some great creative and great writing, and just it was one of those things where I want to find out other stuff that she's written and seeing, okay, what else out there is, because this is definitely now a title that I'm going to really look into, going forward in the future, because we've got just from one issue, we're seeing nice, beautifully layered, writing storylines that have a long future that's going to play out.
There's a supporting cast here that's really intriguing.
Oh, yeah.
Her Consigliere is I just think he's awesome. I just think it adds a whole interesting twist and dynamic because he's not some dunce. He knows what's going on, and he believes in the old systems. It's going to be interesting to see, because he can go a couple different ways. He's either going to be her undoing or her biggest asset. And I'm leaning towards biggest asset because I think he's eventually going to warm up to her and kind of get where she's coming from, and I see them being a team. I want to see this continue. Like this, I never thought I would sit there and say, I enjoy Catwoman outside of the costume. I enjoy it. It's really good. This is the Batman dynamic, the whole thing going on there. What I appreciate is, I've been reading Catwoman. I've been enjoying it. Don't throw that away from me. It's actually the same compliment that I gave to Batgirl, and I really believe in it. You've got to give me some connecting threads to the past. You don't have to make the whole issue about that. But you definitely want to show me that these two, we've seen them in some very compromising positions. There's a relationship there. And they read like two former lovers who've got immense feelings for each other, but also bitterness over the fact that it didn't and can't go where it could have gone. And that's an interesting way and a true way to play this. We've all been at this point in our lives, in some relationship, where there's that point where there's that person that you can still deal with on some level when you see them. There's something unspoken between you, but yet there's a distance that it's vast, like a canyon.
Yeah.
This is a Grand Canyon distance between the two of them, even though the conversation was so intimate. And I loved that feeling because it felt very natural to reality for people. And when you write like this, we talked about Carol and Kyle earlier. This is where relationships are interesting. You want the two of them to find a way. And yet, in this case, it's so much more interesting because they can't.
And you know they can't, and you understand why they can't. Mm-hmm. But just that hopeless romantic that's inside each and every one of us. Because, we all have it, and we all want that to happen. But you understand completely where, Bat's coming from. You understand where Catwoman's coming from, especially now. And I was like, man, this is some really cool moments. Because we've seen her early in the issue dealing with the other crime bosses. We're seeing her deal with Batman. We're seeing just, the future of possible allies and where things are going to go. All within this first opening issue, we're seeing just the multiple, dichotomy that she's juggling and that she's dealing with as a person, as this leader, as this crime boss. Is she hero? Is she villain? Is she her own unique entity that's not easily defined? There is just this complications that is Catwoman, and the character's always had that charm to her, but she did lean more towards the thief and did lean more towards the bad girl. But it's again, now she's even a stronger, darker position, but you're seeing all the good she's doing, and it's this wonderful, it's this wonderful what is going on, what's going to be the end game, where's she going to go with this. And another thing that I'm absolutely loving is this person that we're seeing now, I can completely see turning into the 5 year later Jump person. Mm-hmm. The way that story ended up and how everything played out there, I could see this person having that progression right into that character. And I'm like, that for me is an outstanding, just the fact that we're getting the glimpses of this. I can see where she could lead into that and where things could go that way for her.
When she's walking with her cousin and consigliere, that sequence, I was just like, you could see the music, like it's something out of a Tarantino film. You just kind of need that playing in the background. Like, I would not want to be in their way in that moment.
The theme I know exactly what song you're talking about. Mm-hmm. That don't, kind of like that. That it was a pure instrumental, but it had that kind of like rock beat backing.
And there's a lot of
Crazy 88, that scene, mm-hmm. with the Kill Bill Volume 2, where going through the one Japanese restaurant, that whole fight sequence when they're walking in and the group is just walking in a straight line and everyone's bowing and go right this way. That music is pumping through my head as you see them just walking. It just I hear you.
It's just great. I mean, when a book in the first issue kind of starts giving you this kind of vibe to it. This one, wow. I mean, then we jump to Black Mask. Like, honestly, it could have ended there. I would have been like, this is really cool. Then they go to Black Mask, and we see that Black Mask is doing a power struggle here. I love the fact that, we've got Black Mask now going, hey, you want the tower back? So this is going to put him, once again, in direct confrontation with Catwoman, who's in a very different place of power now than when we've seen the two of them previously interact. That kind of stuff really works for me.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's, when you commented about the artwork earlier, I got to completely echo and just, agree with your sentiment that this has been, it's got that different tweak to it, a different feel to it. It's got that artsy style to it that I'm like, I like that in certain books. I like that, and think it's so fit with this, especially you look at the last couple pages of this issue where there's very little dialogue. There's some internal stuff, but it is Selina just walking through her place and just looking the final ending panel where she's on the balcony looking out on the city, and just everything that led up to that. You just get that great, again, that really just cool feel to just the look and just the vibe. And I'm like, man, this is some cool stuff.
I love the cutaway of the compound, and I love the visual styling of that. I liked the coloring of each room. There was like a simple color aesthetic that had like perfect shading, and I'm doing the if I sound at all like I'm diminishing it, it's the opposite. The colorist made a really cool choice in how it was all laid out, and I thought it was just a great dynamic of pencils and inks and artwork. The zoom in panels, the zoom in bubbles, I should say, where we got to see, her thought process, her cousins down below. It just kind of gave you a size of vastness to this whole place. This is a crime family. So there is not 3 people in this place. There is a whole group of people in this place.
There's a small army.
Yeah. And the, this alluding to, this is my 9th live, all that, again, the cat routine. But again, I mentioned it earlier, seeing in the safe, and again, another connecting thread to the past, but also showing her looking towards her future. And we're seeing Gotham being rebuilt. This is exactly what she's trying to do and what she's a part of. You see the memories of her being out there in the midst of all that, but she can't be because she's here. Yeah. This is just really intriguing. Very, very good use of this character. And it really took a book for me that was a good book and made it into a just top of the stack amazing read. I haven't had this reaction to Catwoman since Ed Brubaker took over. Way back when, and then, after him, Will Pfeiffer took over. I really loved that run. I thought it was just really an interesting run with Catwoman. I enjoyed Catwoman in the New 52, not knocking the book, never was on the chopping block. It was a great read, but this is different. There's something special going on here, and it really is a marriage of great storytelling. This writer, I don't know her. I want to know more of her work. Really good first issue. This is I want to, actually, it was funny. The more we've had this discussion, I want to see if there's what else this writer's done, and I want to seek it out because I'm very into what's being delivered here. Very good starting point.
Amen. I completely agree with you. It was funny because when we were talking about what books we're going to discuss, I hadn't read this one yet. Mm-hmm. I had a couple other books I was reading, like, oh, you got to read that. I'm like, oh, okay. And as soon as I read the book, I was like, okay, Sean's right. This is amazing. And you were very excited for it. You got to read it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I completely saw what you said. And just, again, this is a wonderful marriage of writing and hard work. So I agree with you. I want to read more of her stuff. I want to read more of stuff she's written, but this artwork is absolutely beautiful. This is something that it's got a nice grit, a nice artistic style to it that, it fits on a lot of different titles. Catwoman is definitely one that fits, especially this status quo change that they're doing with her, where it's not the cat burglar jumping around and doing the really neat stealing and just the coolness that was always the slick style of Catwoman. Well, now there's more layers to her. There's more, as a character, there's more of an in-depth feel for her. And I'm like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a very, very cool start to the book. Okay, the last book we're going to chat about on this episode is Gotham Academy #1, written by Becky Cloonan and Brendan Fletcher, art by Carl Kerschel, colors by Geiser and Dave McCaig, letters by Steve Wands, cover by Carl Kerschel, variant cover by Becky Cloonan, assistant editor is Matt Humphreys with the editor Mark Doyle. This was one of the ones, I think because knowing out of the starting gate this was going to be a brand new title in Gotham with a new theme. This idea of Academy being set in Gotham. The artwork of this one grabbed me right away. I was really intrigued by this one. So I walked into this book excited for something unique. One of the things I've liked in the New 52 has been the attempt at unique new titles. I've been saddened that, because of sales and how things go, it seemed to be they were shrinking away from doing new and fresh, interesting titles. With the announcement of like Secret Six coming back, the announcement of a title like this, I'm getting excited again because we're Clarion is another book that we'll talk about that next episode. We've got these books that are starting to be attempted that are just some unique and different titles. I like these mixed in with some of our regular ones, Star Spangled War Stories, that type of thing. We've got a lot of cool stuff being done right now. I really enjoyed this out of the starting gate because it's something unique and different. It's neat to have this academy set in the dark world of Gotham where there's a creepy kind of horror-ish story going on with some endearing characters. That's my take on it. Where are you at?
This is a title that if we weren't doing the podcast, I probably wouldn't have given it a read through. Mm-hmm. And because it just when talking about a new title, okay, I did a quick blip. What is it? Like the quick blip didn't have me going, oh, I got to read this. But it's one of the things that I'm kind of glad we do the book, we do the podcast, and I do give other titles that I normally wouldn't read through a try because this is a really cool read. It's not like one of those, oh my God, I got to keep reading this, but it's not for me. I'm going to drop it. There's definitely, you mentioned that creepy kind of horror goth, what's going to happen, but it's a Gotham book, but it's not a Bat book. And I like the fact that there is that difference to it. There is that different groove and, and kind of a different feel to it. I'm very curious where this goes, and I hope it does well because I think this could give a nice palate cleanser for me.
It also reminds me kind of like anime.
Yeah,
And I'm very leery to put it in one category because it just being set in Gotham, it's kind of its own unique thing. I love that there's this thing hidden in the wall that like we don't see till the end, but to me it brought it all together. Like I read it through a second time in a very different way. I want to know more of Olive's story. Like what is her background? What has she been through to be there? Her whole escaping was, I don't know, just with her friend watching it and her like being this girl that kind of gets involved in things. I want to see what kind of adventures they get into. I like stories set in a school, it's the teaching background. Yeah. I like this kind of stuff. I'm into seeing these kids. I'm into seeing them being set in Gotham. I like that they're likable. That's really important for me because they're two new characters. I don't know that there's any history with them. If there is, I don't know what it is, but out of the starting gate, like I liked seeing them together. It reminds me, the anime where it comes from is I still like animated features. I really like serialized animated features. I loved things like Robotech and stuff like that where, you could follow like a serialized story and it was fun to do that. This having that feel for me, these are two kids that are really likable. I want to follow their adventures. The adventure aspect of it really is what kept me into this story. I like that Hammer's a connection to the Bat universe, him being the headmaster there. I want to see what's going on with him. Is he good? Is he bad? Is he somewhere in between? It's got kind of a Harry Potter-ish vibe to it, but that's oversimplifying the situation. But it fits perfectly into the Batman universe because this is that kind of dark, creepy world. This is a way to showcase like a younger crowd in seeing Batman's world today and currently, because that was today's Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. And seeing him there and having kind of this, okay, I know this girl because of the fact that she's been through some things. I'm going to check in on her and make sure she's okay. That kind of thing, that endears me to Batman even more. Because we know he's got a soft spot for kids and trying to help them out because he was that kid who'd been through something traumatic. So his kind of wanting to be involved and check up on her is perfect. You don't want to overdo the use of him in this one because we really want to get used to riding along with the kids and getting to know who the bullies are in this school, how it fits in like a real world setting, where you've got the typical class groupings that you would have in any kind of academy, while at the same time having a hook. And the creepy thing in the wall was my hook. when I read through this whole thing, I really found myself enjoying these characters. Seeing the bat signal was great and all that. The creepy little eye in the wall at the end was like, I'm like, you got me. Hook, line, and sinker. You frame all this cool stuff that I was really enjoying with a mystery at the end. You got me on this one. We probably are in different places about this book because I was excited about it walking in and it delivered. Great. The artwork for me was really nice because it's different from anything else that I'm currently enjoying. And that for me is always a strong point. When you've got an art style that's unique to any other title that I'm doing, you're going to hook me because I read a lot of comics. And when I'm like, ooh, I'm really enjoying just turning every page. And, as you're seeing their adventures and you're seeing them climbing through the tower, and you see the part where the girl almost falls and they're helping each other through that. I've got I don't want to say I have a fear of heights, but as a kid, I used to go up to, Borromeo, the seminary.
Yeah.
Up there. They had that old house in the back. Did you ever go back there and go sledding or anything or walk around back there? They had an old abandoned house back there. My brother and I used to go climbing in that thing. When we go climbing in it, it wasn't quite like this, but, as a kid, it was always fun to you're going places where you really shouldn't go, those type of things. This book took me back to my childhood, and that kind of adventure is unique right now. I'm not reading anything that's really doing this in other titles, so that's where it really grabbed me because I'm like, oh, this is fresh. This is kind of something different in the DC universe. I'm glad this book's here because it's a different sort of take. I hope it does well, and I hope it does well because it's different.
Yeah, and it's funny because for me, when I was going through the first read-through, the artwork was something that was the first thing that caught me. And I'm usually the story guy, and it's, I always appreciate the artwork, but it's usually on that first read-through, I focus more on the story being told. But I kept catching myself looking at it, just appreciating that I was calling it anime vibe. It's not anime style. It's not like a full-on anime, but it did have that kind of vibe and that feel to it. And like you, I do enjoy the anime stuff, and I like that look, And so I was like, this is a really cool-looking book, and I was digging that, and just the adventure side of it. I was like, okay, what's going on? But exact same thing you said with when you saw the creepy eye at the end. You're like, ooh, okay, this is going to be more than just this girl interacting and dealing. There's something else going on to it. And my second and third read through, for me, this has a Nancy Drew type of young Sherlock Holmes kind of vibe to it.
I love that you said both. Because the Nancy Drew is almost oversimplifying. When you threw in the young Sherlock Holmes, I'm like, no, I'm into all that. I get where you're going. It's you can't really pin it down to one or the other. There's a little bit more of a twist to it. I think it's a lot of these genres that we've been bringing up, and that's cool. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was really just vibing with everything you were saying. I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and exactly. You can't have just the one or the other. There's going to be some difference, to it, as well as, as I said,
Goonies.
A little bit of
there's a little Goonies in there too.
Yes, a little bit of Goonies, a little bit of fun to it, a little bit of. There's going to be a little bit of horror. There's going to be a little bit of goth. There's going to be a little bit of creepiness. Mm-hmm. There could be some supernatural stuff going on as well. So this is going to be one of those books. As I said, this is going to be really a palate cleanser for me, and not in the sense that it's a negative way. This is going to be something that's just going to give me a nice whoosh, kind of nice, cleanse everything, get things going through. Hey, let me read some Gotham Academy. It's a different vibe and different groove to what's currently going on in the other DC Universe titles. And this, hopefully, people give it a couple issues, get your groove going, and see where this thing goes. Because this is one I'm really glad that I did pick this up.
When her friend, fell and caught the gargoyle. Yeah. I love seeing Olive go rescue her because they aren't super powered. These are two kids that were exploring and they got into this adventure scenario. That's where I started connecting to things like Goonies and stuff like that too. Because I started hearing that kind of music going in. It's funny. There's been some real cool books this episode where I started hearing the musical interludes and the adventure sequences kick up. This one, we might be in different places on this one because I adored this. I found it very charming. And I'm always cautious to say that because sometimes when you say that, it's almost like you're being pretentious, and I'm not quite willing to say that it's great, but I think this book is great because it's charming. It was just something very different that I'm not reading right now, and I know I keep saying that word a lot, but when there's something unique going on, like them falling behind Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And Bruce seeing that it's Olive and just the way that all played out, calm, cool, and collected like Bruce is, there was just something too, like they were just caught by Daddy.
Yeah.
I like that kind of stuff. I really found myself, you know what else? I've mentioned it on the show in multiple episodes in the past. I loved the cartoon Recess from Disney.
Yeah.
And, this had a little bit of that too as well. Because the characters were ones that I want to see more. You've got to, when you're doing a new issue like this, if you don't make the characters endearing and ones that you actually care about in the first issue, there's going to be a quick jump off.
Yeah.
They did a really good job in this in introducing some new characters. This was everything that I was hoping it was going to be and more. Like I said, the eye in the end was like, what? You already had me because I was into the characters, but now you're going to put this kind of crazy mystery into the whole thing. And it gets a little Scooby-Doo because I want to see them. I want to see the gang find out what's in the wall.
Yeah. And is it going to be a man in a rubber mask, or is it going to actually be a demon?
I think it's going to be.
What's
more
it going to be? Yeah. And that's something else. Like, again, I really did enjoy this book. This is something that, as I said, I'm really glad I did pick this up. Mm-hmm. And I am looking forward to seeing where this goes. As I said, this for me is going to be a great palate cleanser because of there is fun to it. And we always caution throwing out the word fun because people talk down, but no, it's got to have, we've been laughing. So it's like this, it's like this, it's like this. Yes, all of those things make this a really cool read and make this really fun. And it's, this isn't going to be her dealing with, new gods or dealing with, aliens from another planet. Maybe she won't. I don't know. But it's going to be more of focused around this. And I think it's, I'm looking forward to this. This is another one that, it's going to be a solid read for me and seeing where this goes and how, what's going to be the groove of the title. Because they've already done some really good intros of some supporting cast. I now want to see, let's expand out the universe. Let's see her interact with some of these, her interacting with, the sister, with her little friend and her brother and all that, what is that dichotomy? What is that relationship? Where did it go wrong? Where did it go right? Is there going to be something more down the line for them?
Yeah. One of the things that Jim and I are going to be doing on the next episode is continuing this discussion of new books and new creative changes. So please, if you're enjoying any of these titles or any of the ones where there's been some swaps, over this last month or so, give us your thoughts. What have you been digging? What are your hopes on them? We tried to share some honest thoughts on where we're at. The funny part is I enjoy all the books that we've talked about today. Batgirl's the one... Because of I think it's kind of behind the eight ball because of the fact, only because they're following, we've mentioned many times on the show, our love for the writing of Gail Simone. It's hard for anybody to follow that kind of writer. Earth 2 had that. I was very tentative with Earth 2 at first because of the fact that I was such a James Robinson fan. But look where Earth 2 wound up for me. I loved what Tom Taylor was doing on Earth 2, or, still doing on Earth 2. So I want to see Batgirl wind up being in that spot. It's not there yet, but it has the potential for me. The other two titles, oh my God. I mean, it's like really a cool month for me. I need this kind of excitement. This is why do you introduce new titles? Get people excited again. Why do you do a status quo change? We've reached the end of a certain story, and it's time to head in a new direction for that. My hope whenever they do stuff like this is I fall in two camps. My first camp is I'm already been attached to the creators that were doing it previously. So where are they going? We got Gail Simone going over to Secret Six. We have Ann Nocenti going over to Clarion, which we will talk about next episode. So cool, these are creators who I was digging before. They're going to new titles. Cool, I want to see what they're going to do. The advantage is now we've got these other things going on that are interesting, and I want to see where they're going to go. So, can we get Secret Six now?
Please.
Because for me, it's funny. The ideal for me would have been to keep Gail Simone on Batgirl just because of how much I love her. And it would have been like having her on Birds again and Secret Six at the same time, which would have been like a geekasm for me. But in this case, they've done a really, really good job of putting an interesting creative team on that book. This was a very cool episode. I'm glad we had an opportunity to do this, just to share some things that were unique and new. Please let us know your thoughts wherever you fall. Do you feel the same? Do you disagree? Do you agree with Jim? Do you agree with me? Because I think along the way, with the exception of Catwoman, we were sort of in different places on a couple of these books. Not far off, but we had different reasonings for where we were at, and I'd be curious to see where our listeners are. Speaking of voicemails, why don't we jump to some right now?
He is called Hawkman. His gauntlets possess awesome powers.
Hey guys, this is Dell down in Houston, and I'm calling because I'm just really having some serious geek out moments with all the stuff we have on live action TV right now. I mean, this is the perfect time to be a geek. I mean, you have all the shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Gotham, Flash. Tonight is the premiere of Arrow. Constantine's coming up. There's a story about Supergirl coming out. Then, of course, in the summers, we have all the various movies. This is like G. Kevin going on right now, and I just had to say that I just love what they're doing with Gotham. The backstory in it. I haven't seen this week's episode yet. It's on DVR. But even going from the first episode, when you see Jim talking with Bruce on the steps in the alley, it's like you can see that's where Bruce really learns to trust Jim Gordon, knowing that this is a good guy. He's actually been where I've been. He knows what I'm feeling. And you can see the good beginnings of a relationship there. And I just had to call today because I saw Flash last night. Oh my gosh, all the different nods to things that are going to come up in the future. Like, for example, the guy's walking past the cage, and you see on this broken cage, you see Grodd on there. It's like, for real, and just so many little nods and winks that are going to just continue to build and build and build and build. And I'm just loving it. And I also love the fact how Ollie's little cameo on the show was just really cool, because the fact that you expect Barry to see Ollie taking off and saying, "Oh, cool," and then he stops and you see Ollie look back and see Barry running away, and he's like, "Oh, cool." It kind of shows a different side to Ollie that we don't usually see on the Arrow show because it's so much darker. But another cool thing is, I'm sure you guys have seen this, but maybe some people haven't. What I mentioned about Supergirl. I remember thinking when I first heard about it, oh man, that would be so cool to see if Supergirl could be in the universe. Oh, that's going to be on CBS, blah, blah, blah. Then I read another story saying that CBS actually owns part of the CW, so that there actually will be an inter-network crossover between the Arrow, Flash, and Supergirl. I'm like, seriously? So it's just a great time to be a geek, to just love these comic book based shows, and it's just good to see how things are going to take off. I don't know if the television world going to belong to DC and the movie world is going to belong to Marvel. I don't know, but it's just looking forward to seeing what they have in the future. Okay, guys, keep up the good work. I am sitting in my parking lot at work, so I better go get inside so I can make some money so I can keep paying my phone bill so I can call you guys some more. All right, have a good one. Bye.
One of the things I love about voicemails, I'm glad we have an opportunity to do a voicemail catch-up here, too, because I love this kind of stuff. I love hearing what fellow fans like about these new television shows, because I totally agree with his sentiments. Like, I want every day is like this cool... I ended up with each of these shows, I bought them on iTunes, which I don't usually do. I usually wait, get the DVD sets and stuff like that, but I'm finding myself rewatching these episodes already, and I'm really liking that delivery. It's cool that we have so many options to get these shows immediately into a library for ourselves, or to wait for these wonderful Blu-ray and DVD sets that come out with all kinds of cool extra features and stuff. It's just a neat time to be a fan for that. And I end up finding myself, I watch the episodes of the show the day after. Because of that, I wait till they're in my iTunes account and then just watch them that way without the commercials. But I'm really digging each of these shows. Gotham has gotten nothing but better. like as it's gone on. It's funny how we were kind of both tentative on the first one. I don't know if you're in the same place I'm at, but it's like now where the show's at, I adore it. I mean, it's like really a terrific show, at least in my mind. Are you where are you at with Gotham?
Oh, God, yeah. We're both in the same page on this one. And, yeah, Gotham, Flash, Arrow, all of them. I'm like, oh, my God. I am so happy with the TV. I'm gonna fill up my DVR, so I gotta watch that because I'm not deleting them when I watch them because I want to go back and rewatch stuff. Yeah. And it's I now have to make sure clear out this, clear out that, just so I can protect my my titles.
Did you watch Constantine?
I haven't had a chance to watch Constantine yet.
I loved Constantine. Please let me know when you do, because we'll kind of do like a quick little blurb about it on the show. It's Arrow goes without saying. I mean, it's funny how Arrow, I'm going to say right out of the starting gate, season 1 had a certain place for me. Season 2 built on that and only got better. Arrow's like climbing this ladder of awesome. Arrow to me is the flagship, for me, my flagship superhero show.
Yeah. I will concur.
It's just really, the cast, I really care about. The addition of Ray Palmer, I think, was fantastic. I love the Felicity storyline and what's going on there. Everything that's going on with Laurel is really interesting, and Roy and Thea, and and Merlin. I mean, having him, and I mean, it's really just a terrific show every week. I can't wait for that. Flash is another one that's on the run. I mean, I'm making a pun, but he mentioned the difference in tone, and he's right. I love that. I love that, like, Arrow's like this darker tone that we've seen through Arrow, and it should be that tone. To me, and I geeked out over the fact that they're turning it into Star City. I did geek out over that, but Flash, I love that the tone is brighter. There is a darkness to what's happened to Barry along the way. The fact that it looks like they're doing the Professor Zoom storyline has me geeking out. And I'm going to say, again, Professor Zoom. And I'm going to leave it at that for people who never read that storyline, because it's going to be super cool if they do that. They're bringing in some really cool comic elements without being 100% beholden, similar to Arrow. They're doing a really good job of saying, this is the foundation core of what we want to bring in. We're going to pull this and pull this and pull this, but at the same time, we can bring in characters like Firestorm and Vibe and Killer Frost and leave you to wonder if they're going to go down those paths or not. I find that really compelling.
Oh, God, yeah. This is you mentioned, Daryl mentioned about how Marvel has the movies, DC has the TV shows. And I agree with that statement. DC is just crushing it on the TV shows. And the thing I'm loving is the fact that we as comic book fans have something that, we've got the little Easter eggs, the Grodd Cage and this and that. We know, oh, look, that's so-and-so. Hey, that's Merlin. Oh, and we got these little geek out moments. But if you're not, into the comics, you still get to enjoy this. You can still, a friend of ours, Joe, doesn't read comic books, but he's seen The Flash. He's really digging The Flash. I've got people at work who are, I've got him into Arrow. I've got him into Flash. I got the one who's really into, with Constantine. So there's going to be, there's some non-comic book readers that are going to get into these characters. They're going to get to see this, and they're getting a really cool representation of who the character is and who their support cast are. And this is a comfortable feel. Like when you sit there, I'm like, yes, this is, you're seeing who Ollie Queen is. A little bit different than in the comic book, but you know what? You are still getting that core of his being. Barry Allen. They've so nailed Barry, just the heart and soul of who Barry Allen is. I'm like, yes, you're seeing who the Flash is. So I'm very excited for this TV universe.
Yeah, I am too. It's funny on the Marvel side of it. I am such a geek for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's really, I agree with his, it's such a good time to be a fan because, we're all comic fans and I enjoy the Marvel Universe. I love the Marvel Universe, grew up with it. So it's great to see Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. be such a cool show as well and linked to their movie universe. So they're doing some cool things. I like that the DC film and TV output doesn't necessarily feel the need to completely go along with what Marvel's doing. I think there's a point to that. Because I think what Marvel's doing really well. And they should keep doing that and keep doing it really well that way. I think DC, if it's going to keep moving forward like it is, I think they're smart in developing their own flavor. And I think, the TV being their first major statement. Not that they've done the Batman films and the Man of Steel and stuff, which are great, but TV is really where they've been making their big statement right now. It's gotten me more excited for the fact that now they've made all these announcements of these cool movies that they're going to do along the way. In Constantine, I'm going to keep it at this because it's a teaser for you without spoiling anything for you. There is a cameo of sorts in the first episode of Constantine that made me geek out huge. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Nice.
And you'll see it right away when you get to that point, and you'll go, "Oh, cool!" It was one of those. So I'm not ruining anything for you. I'm more cueing you that you're going to want to look for a cameo. And it was a good show. It really was. The casting of the guy who plays Constantine was pretty killer.
Nice.
He does a really nice job.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Hey, how's it going, Jim, Sean? This is Brandon calling out New Orleans again. Just listening to your episode talking about Gotham and The Flash, and I got to tell you, man, I'm watching both shows. Gotham definitely getting better. The first episode I was so on, which is I kind of heard your comments on you're the Batman guys. You guys know me, I'm the Batman guy. So I definitely you would have thought that would have been my favorite, most easily swayed show. And it's good. I'm not taking anything away from the show. It's definitely good, but it's got, it's definitely got some room to grow with. The casting, love the casting. Bullock is perfect. I'm not too keen on what they're doing with the character all the way, but, I do take into consideration that this is a kind of an Elseworlds tale. Some people are like, why would they all be there? Which, in the beginning before the show came out, I was kind of, I was one of those people beating the drum of, you can't have these villains in there because, the world of Batman, in my opinion, the world of Batman is, he created the villain. Like, the end of the first movie, Batman Begins, did it perfectly with Jim Gordon and the escalation comment, We start carrying automatic weapons. They get bulletproof vests. They're wearing a mask, and then there's the Joker. But it's definitely getting better after the first episode. I've noticed that they're making improvements, and they're not kind of hitting you over the head with this guy's this girl's going to be that. It's just more like little nods and winks, which is good. It's cool. I definitely like it. But it's my least of the three superhero shows I'm watching on TV right now. The Flash. Oh my God, The Flash. I knew this was going to be good, but I had no idea it was going to be that good. I've got my stepdaughter who is 8 coming to watch it every week now. She gets excited when she knows The Flash is on. She knew nothing about The Flash, and now she's just pumped for The Flash. And my oldest stepdaughter is 12. She loves the kid from Glee. So, it's kind of a win-win in the house with both of those situations. And man, I just got to say, I love this guy. I'm pretty sure I called in last year on the episode where he was introduced in the Arrow and ranted about him, raved. I knew this kid was going to be something special, and I don't even think he's hit the pinnacle of what he's going to do with the Flash. Like, I can see him growing so much as a character. Just within the second episode, he's got some range. He's got some really good range. I almost teared up in the end of the first episode when he had the conversation with his father in Iron Heights. It's very emotional. very good, very heartfelt, and you know, I love that about this show. It's going in every different direction. It can be heartfelt, it can be actiony, it can be everything, and it's got it. And man, Cisco, I love Cisco. What a freaking guy! He is awesome. He's like basically us in the show. You know, I don't know if they'll do the whole vibe thing or not, and I don't know if y'all caught this last year, but the episode where those two, Cisco and Killer Frost, I can't think of her name right now off the top of my head, but when they guest starred on that one episode last year in Arrow, Cisco used this big gun and it did a pulse thing like his vibe powers in the comics. You know, it shot like a O-ring out. I don't know if that was like a nod or link to it, but it was, you know, it was cool. And he's definitely one of those guys that he's meant to be us in the show. You know, he's just happy and geeking out with everything the Flash is doing. I can't wait. And H.G. Wells, man, if you guys watched the episode last night, I still don't know if that makes him a bad, well, it makes him a bad guy, what he did, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I don't know if that definitely defines the fact that he is a villain, because his goal is to protect Barry. Maybe he's come back from the future to make sure that Barry doesn't disappear in this crisis. I'm not sure, but I just had to call and rant and rave about those of them, man, because they are fantastic. The multiplex scene has got to be my favorite so far as the special effects goes. When he found him at the end in the middle of all the army of multiplexes, it was great. When he thinks back to the little conversation about Joe, and then he thinks back to what they said about the guy being a little bit weaker, and he just runs through the army of multiplexes. It's fantastic. My fiance just got caught up on the second season of Arrow, so I've got the first two episodes bought, or tonight I'll have the episode bought since I'm working, but waiting on to watch that because I know it's going to be just as good as The Flash. But anyway, guys, I was just calling to rant and rave about it, so nice talking again. Y'all take it easy.
Did you ever watch Homeland on Showtime?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Marina Baccarin, I'm probably butchering her last name, but the wife?
Yes.
She's Leslie Tompkins.
She's Leslie Tompkins. Oh, my God. Awesome. Yes.
Yeah. It's funny. His mentioning of Gotham and the way he was viewing it is kind of where my path's gone. It started out slow for me, but oh my gosh, each week I'm more and more into it. It's just a different sort of build, and I'm fine with that, actually. Everything that I was hoping with that series is what's happening. I am so into Bruce and Alfred.
Oh, God, yeah. And, here's the thing. One of the things I'm really digging is we are seeing the birth of the detective.
Yes.
We're starting to see the groundwork, that foundation building blocks. That is why Batman is the world's greatest detective. We're seeing the child inquisitive, this just the beginning process of it. That was something I was very excited when we start seeing that with this kid. And just casting, I got to completely agree that I loved this casting. Across the board, all of them I am just so excited for.
The episode where Alfred was chastising him for his obsession with looking through the files and trying to find out what's going on with the company and all that kind of stuff. But then after what happens to them and then Alfred's back there, we're seeing the birth of the working relationship between Alfred and Bruce. And where he's looking at Bruce in a different light. I loved and geeked out from that. All the while this is going on, the Jim Gordon storyline for me is absolutely amazing. But it's framed with this thing with Oswald Cobblepot and Sal Maroni and Falcone, and Fish Mooney remains awesome.
Yes.
It's everything that's going on remains awesome. Bullock, it's going to be interesting to see, for me, where the Bullock thing works. I get what he's saying with as far as where Bullock's story's skewed, but I think there's a good cop in there, and I can't help but wonder if the relationship with Jim Gordon is going to eventually give us the Harvey Bullock. He's not there yet, but he's going to be. Right. Do you know what I mean? I feel like that's coming, and Jim Gordon's going to be the one that's going to lead him there.
Weird. I am so rooting for the redemption of Harvey Bullock. Because this is going to be a weird analogy, but just go with it for a second. BJ and the Bear had Sheriff Lobo, where
I think I know where you're
when it was BJ and the Bear, Sheriff Lobo was the main bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
But when Sheriff Lobo got his own show, he had to become the hero of the show. And you see just that he's still a little bit of he's still a little bit of a con man, still a little bit of the darker side, but he actually became an honest sheriff. And he actually became an honest law officer. And I see that with Bullock, even though Bullock's a lot more extreme with, some of the stuff that Bullock has done and probably will still do. But I see just the redemption of Bullock. I see him saying that Gotham can change, that with honest cops, some good can happen. Because right now, part of Bullock's motivation to not being a good cop is, why bother? This is Gotham. This is the way it's always going to be. But once you give Bullock some hope that they can change things and things can get better, we're going to see a good cop come out of him.
I love that Fish Mooney and the Penguin's going to be spinning off into the Harvey Bullock show. Your analogies, actually, I had a feeling that's where you were going with that. And it's a very, very good analogy. Gotham, though, has just become awesome. I really, it's another, honestly, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, bam, bam, bam. And now Friday with Constantine. And I'm not taking out the coolness that is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I'm just doing the DC shows. And oh my gosh, Flash! When he's geeking out with that, I'm so worried for Caitlin Snow because I don't want her to become a bad guy.
Yeah, I know. I don't want her to go evil or criminal or whatever her case may be. And I'm like, it's because she's an awesome character. Again, it's, talk about with vibe and, with her and just, Barry. It's just, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to see, I want to see this continue. I want to see, again, I want positive stories, but you know where it's going to go. You know how it's going to go. And it's, what's going to happen to her? How does it happen? Where does it take her? And I think that's going to be part of the intrigue behind the stories because her and Barry are going to already have this connection and this, this partnership and friendship, and who knows how far things are going to go and just the connection between the two of them. And then for her to cross over, what caused that to happen? What was the catalyst behind it? Where does this go from here? I'm like, there's so many things that I'm excited about, and just his acting. I never really watched Glee, so I don't know anything about him from that show, but the guy's got chops. Just, it's not just a fun, show. There is some real acting going on with him. And I'm like, man, that's, because I agree with the visiting of his dad. It was a little bit emotional on my end as well. Like, man, this is some cool father-son moments. This is real acting inside a comic book TV show, inside a show about the Flash. There's real acting going on here.
One of the things he mentioned, the range, and so it's what you're alluding to. The relationship between Barry and Iris is, I root for him so much with that relationship. And it's not just a testament to him, because he's fantastic. But the moments that he has with Candace Patton, who plays Iris West in the show, she is so she's not flat. It's not a wooden character. There's a dynamic and depth where I actually like her. Caitlin Snow is another one. When you see those moments with her and Barry, she's opening up about her relationship with Ronnie and what was going on there. And you could see why she had been distant from characters like Cisco and stuff like that, but now they've started to bond again because Barry's just Barry. He's like the ultimate cool friend and stuff. I really love how this show just has a very different tone than Arrow, which Arrow's like my show of the week. I always look forward to Wednesday night for Arrow. I just think the cast has been so well developed that I love everybody who's on Arrow, and they're like hanging with old friends, and it just keeps getting better. The beauty of this is Flash, as the day before show, really is delivering such a different program, but feeling like it's set in the same universe. I can't wait for more. I love that last week's Arrow episode was alluding to the crossover that's coming up. I'm like, yeah, awesome. I can't wait for more. This is just a fun way to have the week go, because if you think about this episode, we talked about a lot of the great comics that have come out that are new, that we're enjoying, or creative changes that we're enjoying. There's really cool stuff going on in books right now. And those are just the ones with the changes. That's not including the great ones that we're still digging that, haven't had that. So we got all this cool stuff going on, plus it on television. I mean, it's really a fun time to be a fan, and films coming up. And have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. When it's available, pre-order it.
Yeah,
is it still in the theaters? I don't even know.
I don't think it is anymore.
Let me put it this way. If it's still in the theaters and you got nobody to go with, just let me know. I will go with you. I will see it again. It was awesome. It's another one of those guarantees. If you buy it and don't like it, I will buy your copy.
Okay.
And I will already have my own copy. So I like it that much that if you don't like it, I will chastise you for not liking it, but I will gladly give you the money. So I warn you right now, you'll get money back, but you're going to get chastised.
I'm going to earn that money.
Well, because if you don't like it, you're wrong. But it's really just a great time to be a geek. There's cool stuff coming out. And I'm glad that they're doing such justice to these properties. You know what the nice part is? Taking the joking out of the whole Guardians thing, as far as if you really don't like it, you don't like it. But then there's always differences of opinions. I like the diversity in the comic book related product that's coming out to TV and film. They're trying some unique things, like a Constantine being on Friday. When you watch Constantine, you're going to like what the cool thing about Constantine for me was very different than anything else that I'm watching. Great to have that out there. You know what? It's more akin to watching Walking Dead than it is any of these other three shows we just talked about. So we're getting a little closer to that because it's such a Vertigo themed show that it's more akin to that than the others. So it's nice to have so much stuff. Would you throw Walking Dead in the mix?
Yeah.
And shows like you watch Comic Book Men?
No, actually, I don't.
You got to start. There's just so much geek culture stuff on television right now. That means you start with Walking Dead on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. What night's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. actually on? Do we know?
I don't know if
I don't know either, because I end up watching mine off the DVR.
Yeah, so it's always I always end up watching Agents Shield on the weekend.
Okay, yeah, I do too. It's funny. Sunday morning for me winds up being the Saturday episode of Doctor Who, and then I watch Agents of Shield, and I really enjoy that because Sunday's kind of it's kind of nice to just kick back and relax after the work week. And I get up in the morning, I have my breakfast. It's my breakfast show is Doctor Who. My coffee show is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I just smile and just have fun. Yeah. I mean, it's really nice. It's a good way to start off the Sunday morning. That used to be my spot for Torchwood back in the day. So it's nice to have really good geek shows that are in that time. But then in the evening, we got Walking Dead and Comic Book Men. It's like really nice to have that stuff. Do you know Walking Dead's getting a spinoff? I know this is a weird tangent, but seeing as we're talking television. Yeah, AMC just greenlighted it. It's going to be a companion one. I've heard different rumors about it, so please take this part with a grain of salt. But one of the rumors I heard was that it's going to take place before everything we've seen with Rick and crew. It's not going to be Rick and them. It's going to be in another location. But it would maybe show more of the outbreak.
Wow.
The other rumor is that it's just going to take place in a different location and tell different stories there. But I don't know which is true, so please take that with a grain of salt. I haven't read a whole bunch on it, other than that it has been for sure greenlighted by AMC to be a companion show to Walking Dead, which means we're going to have 2 Walking Dead programs now. Not at the same time.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna be releasing at different times. I don't know. I can't wait for that, though. To me, there's so much more to be told in the Walking Dead universe that I'm excited for more.
Well, I really dig, and let's just run with the tangent a bit, but I really do like the post-apocalyptic survival type of stories that you get from Walking Dead. And just it's one of those things whenever I'm watching, I'm thinking, okay, what would you do in this situation? If I was,
You think about what I'd do?
What?
You think about what I'd do?
Well, I think about what I would do.
No, you said what? That's not what you said. You said you watch the show and think about what I'd do.
That's not what I would do.
That's not what you said.
I'll
quote you. You said, I think about what you would do.
I did?
No, I'm kidding. You know, you sometimes do that. You say you talk about yourself in the third person. I'm just being. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm just being a putz. Let's move on.
Yeah, how would all our other friends handle this? I think that'd be kind of interesting. You look at because we have a very wide, eclectic range of friends in our circle, and how would some would fare a lot better than others. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple that I'm like, hey, come on, Joe,
It's funny,
you and me, buddy.
It's funny when I think of our core group of friends. There's certain people that like I would want to survive because I can place them in certain roles where like we really could like survive and do well. I kind of look at the whole Walking Dead group, and I'm really into that part. There's other people that would probably eat. And probably really quickly because they'd get annoying fast. Do you remember him? Yeah, he got annoying fast. He was good barbecue. Yeah. Yeah, that Terminus storyline. Oh boy.
You kind of understand it.
You know what? I could never. I would like to hope. I'm joking with some of the things I'm saying. I would like to hope that I could never fall that far. And it's very.
I agree with you. I would like to think I couldn't, but it was funny. Talking Dead. Mm-hmm. After Terminus episode, they were going into it, and just think about just how they had that peace and that utopia, and then the other crew came in, and they were being tortured and raped, and it was just absolute massacre of this peaceful society they had created, and that's what flipped the switch. Yeah. That was the moment that said you're either the butcher or you're the cattle. And that was their mindset. And it was just, you can kind of understand why someone would do that, why someone would cross over that line and take that final step that, they're dealing with their survival.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can see people going there. I'd like to think that I would be more Rick and Company.
Yes.
I guess that's one of the things I rally behind on the show. You hope you would take more of the. I'm cautious to say the high road because they've gone to some dark places too, but I get it, and it's a very compelling show. I think what works with Walking Dead with me and what separates it is it's so character driven that the zombies are background to it. They wind up being window dressing to the show. And I'm oversimplifying them, but to me, if you're not into that cast and knowing what's going on with them in this environment, you're missing the point of the show. It's done so well. The character drama that comes out there, I really like that. It's actually one of the consistent things so far out of the geek shows that I'm enjoying is that they're just really well written character dramas, and I think it's the reason why you're getting a casual or a non-comic audience that maybe never touched this. My younger brother, who's never really been a Batman or a comic fan, loves Gotham. And he keeps going to me, he goes, is that like really the story? Because he's like, this show is cool. Yeah. I'm like sitting here, there's an irony at my niece's birthday party. My brother and I were talking Gotham. I'm like, really? It took us like 40 years? But it's great because I think, those shows are just reaching out to a different audience. And I'm glad to see that happening because, these are cultural icons, these characters. That's why they matter to us. And I like seeing a new audience brought in. And I do hope some of them read the comics that, go along with those materials. Because, you want those to be around. And if not, the kids maybe that are exposed to these characters. Because they're still releasing new media for kids. And I want to see more of that, too. Like, these shows are clearly geared towards our age range. But I do hope that they continue to do more to reach out to kids. I like seeing when we see animated features and things like that for kids relating to superheroes. It's one of the reasons why I'm really glad that Disney's doing like a Big Hero 6, which is based on the comic book.
Yep.
And taking some of these properties and getting them in the hands of kids because, let's make them aware of some of these comic book properties and hopefully, we'll see Disney do something with that. Their Infinity game 2.0 has like Marvel Heroes in it now. A Disney Infinity 2.0, and I'm glad to see that they're reaching out to a younger audience with some of that as well. I want to see more of that. I'd like to see more of that from DC. There's more opportunities to reach out with them. I think you can separate the materials for those different audience groups. There's nothing wrong with that. I like different comic lines. I like that kind of stuff. And different television lines that are made for each. So it's neat. Interesting little tangent. But
this is Jack from Redlands, and I just finished listening to you and Jim and the great Art Lyons talking about Gotham and Flash. And I have to ditto pretty much almost everything you guys said. I love both of these shows beyond. But to me, the three standout characters in Gotham are Oswald Cobblepot and the Riddler, and especially in the Viper episode when you could tell that Riddler was kind of impressed by the drugs effect on the populace. Even though he's a cop and he's supposed to be stopping it, he like stops for a second and just like admires it. But anyway, the one character you guys didn't really bring up that I think is just fantastic. Now they're all great in the show, but I love Bullock. Bullock to me is just, this guy who plays Bullock is just amazing. The way they write Bullock, the way they write the show in general is fantastic, but the way they write Bullock is just a mess. The way they write Bullock is a mixture of hilarious and infuriating, and this guy plays it perfectly. So yeah, I am way over the moon on Gotham. I am way over the moon on Flash too. The only thing I heard, and I want to verify this with you guys, is it true that Grant Gustafson will not be playing Flash in the movie? I'm taking too long, so I'll have to talk to you guys later. And can't wait for Constantine. Keep up the great show.
yes, it's true. It's Ezra Miller who's going to be doing it in the films, the Justice League film and all that. He's going to be the Flash in the movie. I don't know what Flash he's going to be. I don't know. I don't remember if it's Barry Allen or if it's going to be a different Flash. I don't know that I mind that he's going to. It looks like he's going to be Barry Allen. It looks like. I don't know that I care about that. Only in the sense that I love the TV show. My hope is that they don't, doesn't eliminate the TV show version. I don't see why it would, because they've already said that the TV universe is separate from the film universe.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I care. I mean, I don't mean that in a negative way. Let's have some fun with the Flash. I think there's room for different interpretations.
And I'm actually kind of hopeful and glad they're doing that, because maybe if they're willing to have two versions of the Flash out there, maybe they're willing to have two versions of Batman or Superman. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could get, because I always thought it'd be wonderful if Bruce Wayne showed up at Arrow. And not even say he's Batman yet. Just have, the Bruce Wayne persona, the $1 million playboy, acting a little bit loopy, a little bit drunk, and just hanging out at Star City. In reality, he's there doing recon on Green Arrow. He's doing recon and trying to figure out, who is this Arrow? Is he a threat or is he a hero? What is his deal? And you can have the whole episode where Bruce Wayne plays the playboy, fun, loving kind of guy. And then at the last moment of the episode, you see him kick into Batman mode. And he's like, okay, Alfred, I have enough information here. We can trust this Arrow for now. We'll keep a close eye on him. And it had be the ending of his appearance. Even something simple like that of Bruce, or even of a Clark Kent covering a story. And you have that moment where you see him drop the glasses down and he is Superman. And it's just, you can have these type of stuff. If they're going to take the chance with Flash, maybe we'll get other stuff. So I'm happy with this. I like this. Let's keep this going. Two separate universes. People can handle that. They can handle different actors. They can handle that type of stuff. People aren't, they're able to follow the story.
Ra's al Ghul is coming to Arrow.
Yes.
So it's going to be fun to see. It looks like it's Matt Nable, who is in Riddick. He's going to be playing Ra's al Ghul. So I'm very excited to see that character come in. So who knows? Maybe that opens up the opportunity. I do think that your Bruce Waynes and your Clark Kents are a little bit more off the table than characters like Ra's al Ghul and stuff like that have been in there. But who knows? And they're off the table right now. But who knows what happens after that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a few years from now, if these shows are still successful and they start doing more, crossover of characters, like if the Flash movie's successful and the TV series remains successful, maybe they'll go, okay, that worked. So, maybe we can do more like that. I don't know. I have high hopes. I don't care how they do it, just as long as we keep getting more of this stuff. So it's kind of fun. But a good question on his end. I agree with his love for Harvey Bullock.
Yes, yeah. We didn't talk enough about that, but it's funny because he had the best analogy of him where it's you love him, but you're infuriated with him at the same time. And we talked earlier about just the redemption of Harvey Bullock. I think especially that actor, because that's another solid actor who could do real acting. And can actually, there's, people who do they're, actors who do the lines and they play the parts, you're like, okay. But then there's those actors who really get into the character and it becomes a part of them. And it's, he is doing that with Bullock. It's going to be, he's going to be able to go deep with this guy. And I think, that's why I keep saying we're going to see a redemption of Harvey Bullock just because, the way the show's looking, the way they're getting the groove gone, and I know this guy can pull this off. He can actually physically do it. So there's a lot of neat stuff coming down the line from Gotham.
I want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. Please feel free to call in. We air all voicemails, and we love having you part of our show.
Nothing like the handy-dandy electro claw for carving through metal doors.
Want to remind everyone about our website, ragingbullets.com. That's where you're going to find out show news about where the podcast is headed. Also, updates on releases. Jim and I, with our various work schedules right now, we're a 4-a-month podcast, and our goal is to try to release as close as possible to getting 4 episodes out every month to you. If you want updates on where the show is headed and when the episodes are going to be released, be sure to check out ragingbullets.com. It links to our show Facebook page and to our show Twitter. So if you prefer those methods for news delivery, be sure to add our regular show Facebook page and Twitter page to your accounts. We also have a show Facebook group that we share with DCinfinite.com. And the idea behind that was figuring that they're a shared community. It'd be a chance for all of our listeners to be able to, and the readers of DCinfinite.com, to be able to get and communicate in one set spot instead of 2 different groups. So we love having that partnership with DCinfinite.com. I also want to shout out, though, there's a lot of fellow podcasters and bloggers and friends of the show who like talking about things that are a little outside of DC as well. We're all fans of geek culture. You're going to want to check it out over at the podcast group. And we love everyone who participates there because it's gone so far beyond our show. Actually, there's friends of the show that do regular geek hangouts to talk about programming and things like that just, have just a great time really enjoying the geek culture. So it's a great fan community. It's fun. It's safe. It's people who aren't there to ruin and bring down the hobby. They're there to celebrate the hobby. And I geek out. One of the cool things they do is we'll have people go up there that announce when the new releases, the release dates are coming out. Like they'll do stuff like the previews, when they're coming. DC News releases are coming out. So we'll find out what new books are coming in the coming months and some of the solicitations. And it's fun to watch that kind of stuff pop up in the group. There's just a wonderful fan community there. So I just want to shout out those people because they're awesome. We're also available in Google+. And I have, and you have, your own personal pages. So there's lots of ways for people to get in touch with us. And we love being a part of the communication with you guys. Sponsoring this episode, once again, is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. If you haven't pre-ordered Secret 6 #1, you must do so. Right, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah. We are going to talk about Secret 6 #1 on the show. We're probably going to talk about Secret 6 #2. More than likely, we're going to talk about, Jim?
Secret 6 #3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yes, we have a rich history of loving and adoring everything Secret 6. So if you have never checked out Secret 6, the book's not even out yet. It's going to be a brand new version of Secret 6, but this is the highest possible pre-order recommendation we can give to a book. To say we are excited about this, I want, if there was a way to camp out for this book, I would camp out for this book. because I'm that excited for Secret Six #1. It's $2.99 regularly, 50% off, only $149. You're going to want to sneak that order in now. If you haven't ordered before from DCBService.com, you can do a late order. Get it in as soon as possible, though, so they have the opportunity to get your numbers in. And keep ordering through them because DCBService.com is going to save you a lot of money on great comics, and it's a great way to expand your reading library. So I want to thank DCBService.com for supporting our show. Over at InStockTrades.com, remember they've got those amazing sales I was talking about, including things like the Suicide Squad trade paperback Volume 5, Walled In. $16.99 regularly, 50% off, only $8.49. Gotham City Sirens trade paperback book 1, $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.49. Ronin Deluxe Edition hardcover, $29.99 regularly, 50% off, only $14.99. Great deals that they're running right now, and they change these deals out every week. So you're going to want to check them out over at InStockTrades.com. I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for not only supporting our podcast, but a lot of the podcasting community. And for a company to put that much faith and support in podcasts and really help us offset our costs, because podcasting is not free, we greatly appreciate them. Our next episode, Jim, we're going to keep taking a look at all these new cool books and creative changes and stuff, and just sharing our thoughts on which ones that I really enjoyed talking about this with you on this episode, because of the fact that I knew you and I were going to kind of fall in some different places on some of these. But next week, we're going to talk about books like Clarion. We're going to talk about Lobo, the creative changes on Green Arrow. We're going to talk about things like Arkham Manor and more on our next episode. So we will see everyone then.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.